Welcome one, welcome all. It is Saturday, April 29th, 2023, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time on the dot, which means we are live on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel, the Blog on the Boys Twitch channel, and the Blog on the Boys Facebook page. We are Blog on the Boys, your home for the best Dallas Cowboys coverage across the internet. And today you are going to need all sectors of BTB. Visit blogontheboys.com, watch our show, watch it after the fact if you'd like. You can listen to the podcast version, subscribe to the Blog on the Boys podcast network. We are accessible in any kind of way that you find any kind of content because we live to discuss, to analyze, to debate the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to be here for all of day 3. We will have an undrafted free agency video that we record after the Cowboys put together their UDFA class. That's a little bit more hectic. And in our world now with Twitter, we have to be a little bit more careful than we have been in the past. My dog Bear wants to be the star of the show. So that is who that voice belongs to. My name is Ochoa. And with me is our night one crew. We'll be switching things out a little bit, like an F1 pit stop after the 5th round. But Brandon Lohr, you are here. Rest and recharge. And I think you have some caffeinated beverages flowing through your system at this point.
I do, and I just want to throw it out there. Like, I do have a life. I do have a home. Like,
you have
this
a
is
wife,
not where I haven't been just staying here for 3 days and just waking up in this chair. But yeah, it's fun, and this day is actually always a good time because you hear more about the stories. We see different farm animals make the picks, so it gets really creative and chaotic. So I'm here for it.
Yeah, we are all actually wearing the same clothes basically as we did on Thursday night when it was this foursome. And the reason for that is we are here through our draft coverage. Brandon, why don't you explain? Because Bear is obnoxious.
Well, I was going to say it's fantastic. It's comfortable clothing. Of course, we are all sponsoring, our different shirts, variety shirts, a Cowboys collection from Homage, our partners at Homage, which you can see in the corner over here. So they've been great to, give us some very, very comfortable shirts to wear. So you can find, I believe it's in the description of the video, potentially, RJ, where you can find all the Cowboys gear that they have. Some really, really cool stuff. You can see RJ sporting the NFL Blitz shirt, so that's pretty fantastic.
We're good. The mail passed by, which was not an issue for our evening broadcast. Danny Phantom, you are here as well. How was your Friday night, Danny?
It's good. I hung with Rabs last night, and we were talking things through, and we were kind of just being each other's support system. And as I jumped on the UK pod for a little bit too to talk about Cowboys pick. But yeah, no, I'm you know what, I feel comfortable. This shirt is super comfortable. I feel like the Cowboys entered the draft in a comfortable positions to where they're able to do some things a little bit differently. So, I'm feeling all right. Last year taught me a lot about just not overreacting to things. So I think I'm well more prepared to handle these types of things this year.
You make it seem, Danny, like yesterday was a bit depressing for you. That was certainly the case in our chat. Brandon, you were not as down as you were on Thursday night when all three of you turned rather morose after the Dallas Cowboys took Mazi Smith. But don't worry. Yeah, I think we've all slept on it a little bit. Everybody's feeling a little bit better. Tony Catalina, I know you were scheduled to hop on with the UK Cowboys team, our friends over there as well on Friday. So you are recharged also. Based on your tweets that you had on Friday night, you were not a fan of the Jake well, the Luke pick, we're all, the tight ends are all kind of starting to blur together here. How are you feeling, Tony Catalina, as we wake up here on Saturday morning and we get ready for the final day of the draft?
I think healthy skepticism is okay, right? I mean, you kind of look at these picks, and we felt that way about Tyler Smith last year, and I was wrong. I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but I was wrong in my initial estimations of what his career was going to look like. So I do tend to think that giving them a little leeway is the right move here. But I will say, as we start day 3, 4 through 7 is where Will McClay and them really do a lot of their good work. So I am encouraged and optimistic that despite how you may feel about, a couple of the first 3 picks or all 3 of them, the Cowboys have a chance to really help this team right now.
So let's take a look at what the Cowboys have done, and the mail truck is coming back soon enough. So, Danny, let's go. Mazi Smith, Luke Schoonmaker, and DeMarvion Overshown are the Cowboys draft picks. That's their haul so far. What needs to happen today as we get set to start the 4th round? What do you want to see them do? What would, again, if you are somebody who is feeling a little bit upset, what would help you kind of walk back off the plank a little bit?
I think there are a couple areas that I would like them to address. I think, I feel like most of us thought they would come away with an offensive lineman by the first 3 picks, and that hasn't happened. So I would like to find a player that the Cowboys could try to work into their offensive line. Hopefully in that either round 4 or 5. I think it gets a little dicey. It's even dicey right now, but it gets even dicier later. And also too is, the running backs positions, like what are they going to do? I mean, there's not a lot left. I mean, unless they're just planning on going with a guy that's really going to compete with Malik Davis for RB2. So that worries me a little bit. So those are the 2 spots I would like to see the Cowboys addressed early today, if possible.
Tony, Kevin says we need to get a running back and a guard still. Is that where would you love to see the Cowboys go there in the 4th round? And as opposed to, we could talk edge rusher, we could talk corner, maybe even. But if they go another round without addressing running back or guard, will you start to I was gonna say quake in your boots? I don't know that people quake in.
I would say maybe for guard more so than running back. I understand that running back is a position that we're going to have to attack, but it's not like we're trying to fill like a starter or something like that. No, I understand the tremendous value of having another young running back on a cheap deal to come in here and take some snaps and kind of alleviate Tony Pollard, add to the mix with Malik Davis and them. But I'm nervous about guard. If they don't find a way to get a guard here in the 4th round, then we're really, if we haven't already gotten there, having a real conversation about trying to figure out the best 5 who's already on the roster to be the left guard week 1. So I know some people feel, Tyler Smith should move inside. We're talking about Terrence Steele inside. There's just a million different things with Josh Ball involved. So we're really stepping into the territory here where if guard isn't figured out and figured out fast, that is the reality of the situation.
Brandon, as we take a look at the Cowboys' projected offensive depth chart, and shout out to our friends at Our Lads who do such a great job of tracking this all year long. As it stands, I think we all think the Cowboys left to right would go Tyron Smith, Tyler Smith, et cetera, et cetera. But the other options are not necessarily interesting or not options that make us feel great. I think that there are a lot of people who feel passionately about wanting to kick Tyler Smith outside. They don't want to stunt his development. They don't want this flipping and flopping back and forth, guard and tackle, et cetera, because we all know that it is an inevitability that Tyron Smith is going to miss some time. But we've seen the Cowboys, Brandon, ignore positions at times in different drafts, positions we thought they absolutely have to come away with X, Y, or Z, and they have insisted on their way of belief on something. And sometimes those things have worked out. Other times they've blown up in their faces. But that being said, I think we are at a point, to Tony's point, if the Cowboys don't come away with a guard here in the 4th round, I mean, you're not finding, legitimate playmakers in the 5th round. You're finding role players. And that was our qualm last year when they drafted Matt Waletzko in the 5th round, was this cannot be your swing tackle option. And that's what blew up in their face.
Well, and that's also like Matt Farniak, they drafted it with their final pick a few years ago. And I mean, he has versatility, where he could play almost any position on the offensive line, but you could see the drop off. I mean, he was serviceable when he came in earlier in the year last year, but then he got hurt. And I think, like you mentioned, like after round 4, you're really just getting role players. So, okay, when looking at the offensive line and kind of filling out the depth chart, we don't know what Adoga can bring. The Cowboys liked him enough to try and acquire him last year for when he was with the Jets, but then it didn't work out. So maybe there's something there. Maybe they have a vision for him if that works out. But even like Josh Ball, like where does he stand now on the roster where it's flexibility, trying to kick him inside the guard? Does that mean that the writing's on the wall for him not to be on the team anymore? So can you upgrade from Josh Ball? And I think that if they don't address rounds 4 or 5 at that position, 6 and 7 could potentially be that place where let's see if we can upgrade the Josh Ball spot. If you find somebody that's a little bit better than a Matt Waletzko, like that's fine too. But I think as it stands, they certainly know more than we do when it comes to roster building. I know that's sort of the wet blanket answer for a lot of these things, but even with a backup center, maybe you address that as well.
Danny, Kevin offers here in the chat. Honestly, I don't think a guard can play this year. I don't think a guard can play this year is going to be left on the board when we draft today. And that's the truth, right? Like the Cowboys made their bed on guard. And we'll see what they do here in the 4th round. And we'll obviously be excited about it and all those things. But they're not going to find somebody here. Last year in the 4th round, they took Jake Ferguson and he wound up being a significant contributor. But a lot of that was due to the injury to Dalton Schultz and things like that. But the odds of whoever they draft here in the next hour or so being a significant contributor to them on the offensive line or anywhere are a little bit low.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the Cowboys, they've gotten fortunate with like a player like Terrence Steele, but those kind of things don't happen very often. So absolutely, this is a pick that's going to be looking into the future. And, we suspect Tyron's done after this year. So you're hoping to find a player that has starting caliber traits that can move in and play in the offensive line in 2024. But yeah, you're right. This is it. I mean, the Cowboys have, if you look at a team like the Eagles who have, Jordan Davis, and now they have Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. I mean, their run stoppers are just fantastic. And you're going to need big guys in there that can handle and muscle those players. And they don't have that right now. So it's a little worrisome. I feel like the Cowboys have kind of put themselves in a vulnerable spot, and we want to be able to protect Prescott, and we want to be able to have a effective running game. So offensive line is just, it hasn't gone according to plan. So it makes things a little bit I don't know, just risky at this point.
The Saints traded up for the first pick in the 4th round, and they have taken a guard, Old Dominion's Nick Saldivari. I believe is how you pronounce his last name. I could be wrong here. The Raiders traded up for the 2nd pick in the 4th round, and the Eagles traded up for the 3rd pick. I believe the Eagles have 3 picks in this round. So we'll see. There could be a run on interior offensive linemen. Chandler Zavala is still out there. He's the name we talked a lot about last night when it came to the 3rd round. But this is the 4th round. So Tony, as we take a look at the Cowboys' history in the 4th round specifically, as our graphic loads here, last year the Cowboys took Jake Ferguson. A year before, took both Jabril Cox and Josh Ball. The year before, Reggie Robinson, Tyler Biadasz was actually a pick who they traded up for with the Eagles of all teams. The Cowboys have had some low-key success in the 4th round, Tony.
I would even say high key. You got your quarterback of the future.
Well,
You got some real.
Isn't a saying. People don't say high key.
Check that. I'm telling you. So it may be a
I'm not here to put the kids culture and their words. If high key is a thing, then I'm old.
So high key, there are some productive guys on this list. I mean, I think the jury's still out on Jake Ferguson, but it's promising. I mean, Tyler Biadasz, Tony Pollard, Dorrance Armstrong, Dak Prescott, Dalton Schultz. I mean, yes, this is when you presented this graph and you talked about this. I actually saw your tweet, I believe it was. This is what spurred me to be like, bring me back to Zen a little bit, where I'm like, okay, day 3 is where the Cowboys have kind of made their hay in a lot of situations. So regardless of how you feel about it, they've hit at a pretty aggressive nature, probably more so than a lot of teams in the league.
Jacorian Bennett has gone to the Raiders. So just an update on where things stand. So we'll see who the Eagles ultimately take. Danny Phantom, you shared this. So the most recent, I should say, Cowboys 4th round pick before today is, of course, Jake Ferguson, the tight end who was promised, the player who everybody wanted them to forego a tight end this year in the name of et cetera, et cetera. Last night we talked about Luke Schoonmaker and obviously everything he offers the Cowboys. I wrote about his athletic profile. These things started, you know how it is when the Cowboys draft a player, you start to really kind of finally super dive in on prospects, et cetera, et cetera. We have all sorts of content and articles available at the site if people want to read about Luke or DeMarvion or Mozzie Smith for that matter, and all the players yet to come. But you shared this. It is the RAS score for Jake Ferguson against Luke Schoonmaker. Can you let us know why you wanted to talk about this? This was your idea.
Well, I think when it comes to tight ends, there's a short list of players that really stand out in terms of that are different from our guys. Because if you're going to draft a tight end early, then you want someone who's a difference maker. And I don't think there's a lot of those players out there. I know that a lot of people love space tight ends. They like the athletic pass catchers and stuff. And we know the Cowboys, they have to have someone who can inline block. You just have to if you're going to be a part of this team. And Scooney is one of those players that one of the players I looked at closely and was one of my favorites. Maybe not 2nd round favorite, but because of that, I don't even really spend a lot of time if you can't block, and Scooney can. But on the other side is he does have a lot of athletic traits that you can add. That's, as you can see, quite different from Jake Ferguson. And Ferguson is fine. He's a fine player, but there's some upside potential here with the fact that Schoonmaker he's fast and he's a long strider. There's a lot of athletic traits there. You can jump and so there's reasons to be happy. And the Cowboys, this whole draft, it's like athleticism. They're going for these traits, guys. All 3 of their picks so far have represented that. And so yeah, I mean, if you want to look at players and try to feel good about it, and you see a player like Schoonmaker who is one of the better blocking tight ends in the league, but also does have that athletic upside to him, that's got to make you feel good. So, I mean, it just helps me. I mean, I've always liked the player. And again, it's just more about when he was taken. But I think the Cowboys got themselves a good tight end, and definitely, we just showed, the athleticism is there.
Brandon, so we all, obviously have been, again, learning more about these Cowboys prospects. And when I saw this last night, I went and kind of looked at a few different things. Again, Jake Ferguson, fine player, but not exactly an athlete in the context of what we're talking about here, right? Schoonmaker appears to be certainly closer to the 99th percentile, so to speak. I was kind of browsing around last night, and I included this in the article I wrote. There's a statistic, yards before catch per reception. That's a very specific thing. So yards before the catch per reception. Anybody know what Dalton Schultz was at last year? If you read the article, then you're not allowed to answer, obviously. But yards before the catch per reception.
I don't know.
Okay. Honestly, I don't even know that it's fair to ask you to guess. 6.5 yards before the catch per reception. So that's how much he's running before the ball gets to him on average on all receptions. All right. Peyton Hendershot, 5.1 yards before the catch per reception. Okay. Now we talked about the athleticism. Obviously, Schoonmaker's very fast, had the awesome 40-yard dash, the combine that surely helped his obviously prospects. Does anybody want to guess where Jake Ferguson was at? And we're talking about extremely limited action last year, obviously, as rookies, both Ferguson and Hendershot. But you've heard where Dalton Schultz was at. You heard where Peyton Hendershot was at. Anybody know? Anybody want to guess?
4.2.
It was 2.6.
Okay.
So we're talking about incredibly shallow work for Jake Ferguson. I do think that Schoonmaker could be what the Cowboys ultimately could be a tool the Cowboys are ultimately wanting to use a little bit further down the field. I was trying to hype up Jake Schoonmaker, but it's impossible to ignore what the Philadelphia Eagles just did. They traded up for this pick, like I said. Keely Ringo, the Georgia corner. That is
another Georgia player.
3 Georgia Bulldogs for the Philadelphia Eagles. Tony, you are a big-time Georgia fan. How are you feeling?
Not great, because I know these guys are good, and it's tough that my least favorite team in the NFL and one of our biggest rivals understands that. It doesn't necessarily translate to anything, but anytime you can sign or draft productive players from a big time program with a proven track record of success as of late, that it's the tough pill to swallow. So the Eagles are continually drafting well right now.
Danny, there is something to, I mean, I'm not trying to do the Eagle, this is terrible, why are we gassed at the Eagles thing, but this is not there's no foolproof strategy, to be fair. But, again, nobody takes Keely Ringo last night, and nobody bats an eye. But now, and some of this is their track record. They've obviously earned that. The Eagles have. They've been a very successful team, very well-run team, very well-run front office. But now they do it, and now it's like, poof, geniuses, brilliant, et cetera, et cetera. It's just we talk about the Cowboys having the benefit of the doubt. The Eagles have that in spades relative to the public.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with this too, I feel like the Eagles, and I don't want to be putting them down by any means, but I feel like they didn't even need to come in this draft with any type of draft research. All they need to do is just take the best available. They're going to get a guy that's like 20 picks earlier because that's what's happening. That's every pick has been just some guy that everyone's passed up on, and Philly's like, okay, we'll take him. And same kind of thing last year. We know they got the Kobe Dean, so they're on paper they look fantastic, but these players have to go out there and play. And as an example, Kobe Dean, I don't even know what he did last year. So I don't know. I'm not on the surface. It looks like the Eagles are just knocking this out of the park, but there's a lot of teams that passed up on these players for different reasons. And so, I mean, it's too early to get excited about what Philly's doing until those guys can get on the field and have production. So I don't know. It just doesn't look great, especially in contrast to the Cowboys. It seem like they're doing the opposite. But you got to get out there and play, and we'll see what happens when that.
I do think this is not the same thing as Jalen Carter, obviously, is even Jordan Davis last year, even Nakobe Dean, although that didn't really transpire, although it certainly could now. This is a little bit of a different thing. The value is great, although they did pay a third-round pick next year to get up here. So it's not just, oh, they got him in the 4th round. They had to pay a pretty penny here, and they obviously sensed that somebody was willing to take him here. David has said that this draft has aged Tony 5 years. Sorry, Tony. Brandon, do you want to hate on the Eagles? Now's your chance.
Well, and Danny brought up a good point, and I know Albert Breer brought up something about why Keely Ringo was dropping in the draft, and it seems like that there were some character concerns and everything, and that's sort of the Eagles take a risk, they take a chance on these types of players. And he also mentioned too DeJuan Jones as somebody who's facing that similar kind of criticism right now, and that's why he's dropping. That could be a name the Cowboys take a look at. Blake Freeland just went the tackle out of BYU, so there might be this run on offensive linemen. But to go back to what you asked with the Eagles, it's like there are 31 other teams in the league that passed on him, right? So the expectation is, well, do the Eagles know something that the Cowboys and the rest of the league don't? No, it's just they're willing to take risks because they have a championship type roster. So you can take these types of swings on these players that not necessarily anybody wants right now, because you're the Eagles. You have players in the locker room that are familiar with Ringo. So if there are character concerns, just like there was with Jalen Carter, you have pieces around him to kind of keep him going, keep his pro career going. But yeah, I think at this point, as we're now in the 3rd day of the draft, you're just taking a chance on somebody. The Cowboys have a great record in the 4th round, I think better than what the Eagles have taken in the 4th round. I don't know the comparison, but I would say that the Cowboys are one of the best at that. So trust who they pick, and it probably turned out to be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the day to take these risks, right? Like, if you're an Eagles fan, like, this is totally fine. Like, and much is made about when a team or when a player, has off the field character concerns, whatever. This was obviously talked a lot about with Jalen Carter on Thursday night. The Eagles, again, nobody here wants to hype them up about this, but they do have a strong culture from a locker room standpoint. You do wonder, how that holds up in the future. They're kind of playing with fire a little bit, bringing Matt Patricia in, you know what I mean? And kind of spitting in the face of Darius Slay in that respect. I say that, half jokingly, obviously, but they're continuing to go for it. I mean, I hate the Eagles with everything, but I do admire how they've always got their foot on the gas. Sam has brought up a comment, Tony, is the Michigan Cowboys versus the Georgia Eagles. That really kind of is the way things have shaken out so far this draft.
And we saw how it shook out last year when they met. So I don't love that.
I was going to avoid that part, but but yeah,
it does feel like that.
That's tough. Okay. Well, does anybody feel worse about today now that has happened? Danny, you sort of seem like you do.
No, I mean, I don't care what the Eagles do. I mean, it's again, on paper it looks great, but they have to get these players on the field. So I'm focused on what the Cowboys need to do, and I'm hoping it's important that we're able to counter some of the big defenders that they're bringing in. So that part concerns me, but what Philly doesn't really. I'm not too worried about it. So
well, let's talk about the Cowboys then. To your point, Danny. So Kyle Yeomans, friend of the show from DallasCowboys.com, has a names to highlight list. Thank you, Brandon, for getting this up. Roshan Johnson at the very. These aren't. I don't think Kyle's like ranking them. But Roshan Johnson is at the very top. If that's the pick here, and we talked about how running back is a need, but isn't like a capital N need for the Cowboys. If that's where Dallas goes here at the very beginning of the day, we're all fine with this, I suppose.
Yeah,
absolutely. So. I would be really pleased with Roshan.
Okay. What other names do we like here? I mean,
I like Anthony Bradford.
Scott's one. You like Anthony Bradford?
Yeah.
I mean, what names? We're talking, I guess, 4th round here. So, I mean, Kyle's tweet is again, days or names as we start the day. Any of these names are you fine with here in the 4th round, Danny?
Like I say, my top 2 are Roshan Johnson and Anthony Bradford. I think they're good players at big needs for the Cowboys. Those are the 2 that stand out. There's some other guys on here too that I like, but maybe not this early. Certainly, Cowboys have talked about they're interested in taking a quarterback that they who could compete with Cooper Rush, but I do not want that to happen with round 4 pick. So, those are my top 2.
Yeah, a quarter. I mean, the Cowboys have said a lot that they're going to be taking a quarterback today, so we should certainly prepare for that. But if they started the day with the quarterback, it would feel kind of like a left-footed start to the day.
Like I'm coming into today hoping that that we can get the good times rolling here. So a 4th round quarterback would not be what I can constitute as the good times rolling. So there are some names on this list that I appreciate. I'm interested in Darius Rush, Fahoko is interesting. Like there's some guys on this list that would make me feel good. But if it's Clayton Tune right now, he wouldn't be one of those guys that I would consider a good feeling.
Brandon, this is your list. You pulled this up. What name stands out to you, I guess, other than Roschon Johnson?
Yeah, well, and also another player. The Patriots just took Jake Andrews, center out of Troy. So again, on
the
offensive
Colts
lineman.
just took Tommy finally. Tommy Adebawore is gone to Indianapolis at long last.
Yeah,
Colts kind of having a sneaky fun draft. Anthony Richardson, they got Josh Downs last night. I hate the Colts on principle, but what they're doing today is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think I saw Jim Irsay now has brown hair for whatever that's worth. So but out of the list, I do like Roschon Johnson. I think when you look at the backfield between him and Bijan Robinson, they split a lot of carries. So both players, they don't have a lot of mileage on their legs. So you look at Johnson, I mean, anybody that watched the Longhorns offense could look at him and say, okay, he's an NFL starter. Like it's just because he was a backup to Robinson that he didn't get as many carries, but he's still a really good running back, that big back that the Cowboys are looking for to be a complement to Tony Pollard. I like Eric Gray, somebody who out of Oklahoma, not the home run hitter, somebody who could probably get you the 40-yard dash and then kind of just, slow down a little bit. But Bradford, I think, is a name that's on here that, like Danny mentioned, if the Cowboys want to address interior offensive line, he would be sort of the Connor McGovern, if I had to put that in there, where you look at, okay, can he grow into the role of being a left guard? Maybe not year 1, but maybe year 2, and then just see what you can do from there. But the one that I know, Tyler Lacey, is a name that the Cowboys have met with. That could be a possibility. And same with Fahoko. That's another, name. I think he's more of a defensive edge, but maybe they want to play him at linebacker. But yeah, I think it would be a wet blanket if it was a quarterback. We talked about Aiden O'Connell potentially being there. The Cowboys did a lot of work on him. I know Kyle doesn't mention him, but the Cowboys had a private workout with him too. So that's also a name to monitor.
So we still have a ways to go. We're waiting until 129. So the Seahawks just took Anthony Bradford. I'm so sorry, Danny. Danny, you are positioned where Tom Ryle was last night, and he was jinxing a lot of picks, and David Smith has offered that the jinx is still working. Do you feel responsible, Danny Phantom?
Well, I don't believe in jinxes, but I am going to tread carefully about the players that I throw out. Because I only had 2 people on my list and one of them's gone. So I forget the other one. I'm not going to bring him up. But so no, that's terrible. But I don't know if I think, I was really hoping that, Tony's saying, let's get the good times rolling. I was really hoping this would be one of the times where we get a player that outstanding value. So we can if we just closed our eyes and swapped, picks, like we took him early and then maybe we'd feel better. But I don't know if that's going to happen. So I hope it doesn't continue to be a reach fest for the Cowboys, and we're just going to constantly take players that should be taken later. So I don't know. I'm worried. I'm feeling really uneasy about this.
Tony.
Yeah, I mean, to Danny's point, that was kind of what I was talking about in the first round with the Mozzie Smith pick. It's like, sure, they have their guy, they like him, but are they? This is rhetorical. Maybe this is an honest question. Like, are they looking at the board as a whole and saying, like, okay, this guy is here that we didn't expect to be here, like, or this is good value, or are they just locked in on these guys? Because it felt like they did that last year, and as we're 2 days in and three picks in, it feels kind of similarly.
I would say, what was the last value draft they had? It was probably 2020, right? CD falls, Trayvon falls, Gallimore falls. Even does anybody remember the best value pick of that draft
of 2020?
Yeah.
I feel like it just never stopped.
Yeah. Well, the best from a literal standpoint was Bradley Anai. I think he was they took him in the 5th or 6th round, and he was Daniel Jeremiah's 54th overall player. I remember writing that article that day. I mean, so, and nothing against Bradley and I, but that never, transitioned into the NFL. That never was something that took. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb and Trayvon Diggs are amazing, and Neville Gallimore has had a bit of a role, but the value draft doesn't always work itself out. 21 was a little bit of a hybrid, right? A little bit of a value, a little bit of a need-based thing. We saw them, I wouldn't say reach, but you try a little bit too hard on day 2 with Kelvin Joseph and Nashawn Wright. They landed Osa Digizua. That obviously worked out really well. Chauncey Golston hasn't really turned into much since then, and so. Okay, cool. So last year was a little bit more of the really targeted draft, right? Like our guys, right? Like, and it worked out. Tyler Smith looks great. Sam Williams looks great. Jalen Tolbert, jury's still out a little bit. Deron Bland looks great. So I do think we're kind of seeing I wouldn't say a mixture of value in our guys, but it is a little bit of like, we're taking a guy we like that we feel very confident is not going to be there on the next go around. So it is a little bit of, I guess, calculated reaching that we're seeing this time around.
Well, for me, I mean, yeah, it does make sense, but I guess it's value is relative, right? Because they might view these guys different than we do. So what I perceive as, good value, they don't care. And that's kind of, I understand that. And that's probably a knock against my own argument, but it just feels like when there's a consensus board, guys that we trust and, people that put a lot of hard work into this may not exactly be in an organizational role. And you kind of look at who they take and it's like, you feel like you could have got Overshown later. You feel like you could have got Schoonmaker later. And it's just like, Mozzie Smith, we're encouraged, but you probably maybe could have got him later. But like, that's the game we've been playing for 21 and 22. It feels like.
What if they couldn't have gotten them later? Like, do we feel 100% confident that again, you said it, Tony, value is relative, but Brandon, do we feel 100% confident that any of the 3 players that they've drafted to this point would have been available with their next picks?
Yeah, we were talking about this last night, and Tom brought up the point that I agreed with, where this was one of the final things that he mentioned, where like Mozzie Smith, you probably couldn't get in the second, so you take him in the first. Schoonmaker, you probably couldn't get him in the third, so you take him in the second, and then same with Overshown. So I think it's just the nature of where the Cowboys are picking. They're trying to find the absolute best value later in the rounds. I know when we look at the boards and trust the work that we do, we talked about this night 1. The little disappointment is that there might have been names available that we liked, but when you see stuff come out like Keely Ringo today, there are some character concerns. DeJuan Jones, like the Cowboys know more than we do, and if they feel like Overshown is a better player at the 3rd round than anybody who was available, like an Adebaware, then okay, I trust what they're doing. So I think for me, it is disappointing because when you see other teams have a little bit more success, but with the Eagles, the 10th pick, that wasn't something that they had. It was given to them. So it's like sometimes these teams, they get lucky with getting a good selection in a draft where it's not really great, littered with talent. So I think that's just the nature of where the Cowboys are picking, and then just this draft not being a special one in general.
Okay, so I've already played the make you guys guess game today, but it's a long day, so we have a few times that we're going to go around this. So the Cowboys took Mozzie Smith at 26. Does anybody know how many picks it took for the next defensive tackle to go?
It was quickly because it was Breesy, right?
It was Brian Brzee. Does anybody know when it was? How many picks later? We're looking for a number here.
3 picks later.
2
Holy
picks.
crap. Danny wins the prize. It was 3 picks later precisely that the New Orleans Saints took Brian Brzee. Okay, so if everybody wants to crown, and I promise I'm not trying to like Homer Cowboys this whatever blah blah, but everyone wants to crown the Bills, right? Oh, you jumped the Cowboys to get your tight end, blah 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 blah. Okay, whatever. Does anybody know how long it was until another tight end went after the Cowboys took Luke Schoonmaker on Friday night at 58? And keep in mind, the tight end run had already happened well early in the 2nd round. But does anybody know how long it took for another tight end to go?
I can name the team and the player, but I don't know how long.
We'll go ahead and do that. Let's provide some context clues.
Well, Tucker Kraft for Green Bay.
It was not Tucker Kraft for Green Bay.
Oh.
I can't remember because it feels like the Cowboys got the last of the tier. So I don't.
Tucker Kraft went a few. Looks like 15 or so picks later. Anybody know? Anybody want to guess?
Tight end.
Now would be the time to just offer a guess.
8 picks.
8 picks is your guess, Tony.
Yes.
Danny, what is your guess?
I'm going over. That's my guess.
I'm gonna guess 3.
You're gonna guess 3. Let's see here. I lost my place. Okay, so the Cowboys took Luke Schoonmaker at 58. It was 3 picks later when the Jacksonville Jaguars took Brenton Strange. I know that kind of like went over our heads, because we were in the Luke Schoonmaker aftermath or whatever. So the Cowboys took Schoonmaker at 58. Strange went to Jacksonville at 61. And Tucker Kraft did not go to the Packers until 78. So it took 20 more picks for Green Bay to take a tight end. So, okay. So my point is, like, I'm building this case here that the Cowboys kind of took their guy at their preferred position shortly before somebody. And I'm not saying that, New Orleans or Jacksonville would have taken Mozzie Smith or Luke Schoonmaker, but I think you get my overall point. So the Cowboys took DeMarvion Overshown at 90. Does anybody know when another linebacker went after that? The next linebacker after DeMarvion Overshown?
I only remember the two that just went right before him. I can't think of who went after.
Okay, you don't have to tell me who, but how long it was until...
I'm going to say 11 picks later.
Tony, give me a number.
4.
Brandon, give me a number.
I'll go 4.
Is 1. One pick later, the Buffalo Bills took Dorian Williams out of Tulane. Yeah. So, again, like, if you're trying to slant this a certain way, and I promise that's not what I'm doing, the Cowboys got their preferred guy at their preferred position, kind of marrying value and need and adjusting for all the incidentals. And that position went very quickly right after they picked. So they, you can sit here and people can tell us and they can comment and they can tweet and they can do whatever. Oh, so-and-so would have been there. That same position went very quickly right after the Cowboys took their guy. Does that make anybody feel even 1% better?
No, because I feel like they're making decisions based on, it's almost a little bit panicky. With Mozzie, it's different because they've said he's 13, 14 on their board. That's great value if you're the Cowboys there and picking at 26. But these other guys, I feel like they're getting washed out right before they pick. And it's like, we got to get them or we get nothing. And so they reach for Schoonmaker. And then same thing with Overshown. It's like, two running backs go that I would have really liked right before. And now it's like that tier's leaving. So, I mean, I get it. It's smart. It's kind of like how I do my fantasy draft. You get that last of that tier, but I feel like it's kind of forcing the Cowboys into picking certain positions. And to me, I don't know if you're getting the best players that way.
So to catch up quickly, by the way, Chad Ryland went to the Patriots. I think they traded up for that pick. And
then DeJuan Jones went to the Browns right before that, and the Falcons just took Clark Phillips, the nickel out of Utah.
And I saw a comment that Chandler Zavala is gone, but I haven't seen any
to the Panthers.
Thank you, Tony.
Yep.
So he's gone. So to get back to the conversation about the Cowboys, as we're getting closer and closer, the Cowboys still not on the NFL ticker, team list yet. But Danny, you use the verbiage, I forgot already, but like drafting for need, whatever. I mean, we sat here for literally months and said the Cowboys have set themselves up to not need any one specific thing in the NFL draft, right? So we could reframe that and say the Cowboys set themselves up to do what they want, not just to, and you can frame that two ways. You can say they set themselves up to take ultimate value, the way you talked about the Eagles, Danny, right? They can just show up and take the highest rated player on the board, or that can set you up to be very specific, to be, picky, right? To be very chosen on what you want to do because of everything you've done to this point. Tony, you had a point.
Yeah, I mean, I hear exactly what you're saying, and I was one of those people that pressed really hard on like, okay, they're going into the draft with an open bag to do whatever they want, right? So in my mind, and again, I'm not paid the big bucks, I'm not in that room, but that to me, the philosophy in my mind would be to not force anything, right? Let the board fall organically. Who's there? Trust what's happening, knowing that like these guys are going to help, but you don't need to force a D tackle in the first round. You don't need to force the 5th tight end in round 2. You know what I mean? Like a guy in Overshown that like a lot of people had marked in the 4th or 5th round. Like why get him in the 3rd? Like there's nothing against the players. The players may work out, but they've done enough work. I don't think they realize how well they did that. They don't have to be like, forcing or fitting, a need in there that probably wasn't necessary.
See, you used the phrase earlier that value is relative. I think need is relative. I mean, because they did set themselves up to not have any dire needs. Last year, they were very fortunate that Tyler Smith and Sam Williams worked out because they set themselves up to have essential smash home run picks at those specific positions. And they set themselves up, obviously, to do the same thing at wide receiver, and they failed with Jalen Tolbert, right? And so we've seen them kind of make amends for that in the time since. But I think, we can talk about need, but they don't have any true need. So like that word kind of is meaningless as it relates to this team in this moment. I recognize they have a need at left guard that they have not addressed. They certainly seem to have a plan that we can all kind of pick apart and poke holes in, because it is kind of a flimsy one right now, at least on the surface. But I don't think that we can say, and I get your point in a, vacuum, Tony, that like, well, why not get this guy later? Because you don't know. I mean, and again, I think that exercise a moment ago proves that guy, if they really wanted these 3 specific players, they could have very well gone 5 minutes after they turned in their card.
I mean, with so many prospects and so many, like you said, it can go any way to come into a position, say, we need this guy, so we're going to extend ourselves to get him, just seems counterproductive to what they've done to this point, right? Like they make great trade for Stephon Gilmore, great trade for Brandon Cooks. They kind of set themselves up in a spot where like, hey, if we go into the season right now with what we got, we're going to be competitive. We're going to be more than that. We're going to be a good football team. Then you go into the draft, and then you kind of, and just to play, into what you're saying, now you're like, okay, we want these guys specifically, so we're going to do whatever we can to get these guys. Now, 2 years from now, if they're all studs, then, I'll be quiet. But at the same time, it kind of defeats the purpose. Like, if we hear best player available, we hear, value, we hear this, and, it just seems counterproductive, or just, counterintuitive to that.
The Bears just took Roschon Johnson, so he is gone. They lost David Montgomery in free agency to the Lions, so they now pair him with Khalil Herbert. The Bears are a lot of fun. So that's that. Brandon, what is your thoughts here? I mean, as we kind of pick apart the definition of the word need, because I think that definition is different for every team. Like I think we think of the term value as ambiguous and subjective, but we think of the word need as it relates to the NFL draft as an objective thing, when in reality it is something that has subjective nature to it as well.
Yeah, and I do think that, I mean, we're seeing right now the top of the 4th round, like the Cowboys are getting wiped out with a lot of like the best remaining prospects. So if you take that sort of logic and you apply it to rounds 3, round 2, and round 1, then you can look at it and say, without the grades and everything, well, they're trying to find the best possible value while addressing a need, regardless of the board. And I think within this whole process, the Cowboys said that they wanted to find starters. So when you think about Mozzie Smith, he's a plug-and-play defensive tackle for the Cowboys. Schoonmaker, you hope, can be better than Jake Ferguson, but if he's the second or third, and they want to rotate everybody, you figure he'll get starting reps if you divide it up by 3 ways. Everybody gets a piece of the pie. And then with Overshown, he's going to be a starter on special teams. Like the Cowboys need help on special teams. They lost Luke Gifford, so he has a role already that they're going to fill. You hope that he can just be a chess piece on the defense, but the defensive side of the ball is already set. So when we're looking at the offense right now, I think if they draft somebody right now, you hope it's somebody that could be a starter, but you also have to look at the lens where it's the 4th round. You might not be finding starters at this point. So I think it's just the board is falling in a way where the Cowboys aren't necessarily getting the absolute best players, but they're still trying to find players based off of what they graded and a need and the best available.
Let's see here. Danny, Kevin offers, honestly, I don't get the linebacker pick hate. We have like one proven starter at linebacker, not counting Parsons, who really doesn't play linebacker anymore. That's very fair to say. And KC adds, yeah, not upset about the linebacker pick at all. LV is an injury concern. Damone Clark, I believe, will be good. Cox, the coaches seem to be down on. I think all of that is extraordinarily fair, Danny, as we talk about the DeMarvion Overshown pick. And I think that in saying like, oh, well, they should just rely on Damone Clark to, be the guy. Why waste the pick at linebacker? And there are some people, like, I don't think there's a lot of people saying that, but that chatter is out there. But that being said, we've killed the Cowboys for that, right? We've killed them for like, why are you relying on the potential plan? Like, reinforce, double down, don't take a chance. And I think that's what they did with DeMarvion Overshown.
Except the only problem I have with this is, to me, Overshown's a development guy. I just don't think he's ready to come in. It doesn't make me feel any better about our linebacker depth, to be quite honest.
It doesn't make you feel even 1% better
about our linebacker depth. No, I mean, I like special teams. Yeah, no problem. But as far if like something happened to Clark or Van Der Esch and like, okay, we're going to have to throw the rookie in, I would be extremely concerned. So I don't think he's ready at all. I think there's a lot of development that he's a traits guy, but the mental processing, I think he gets washed out of plays. I feel like that's really, I would be surprised if he had a big contributions in his rookie season. So I agree with the the philosophy of linebacker. We need one. We need the depth. We could use it. But the player himself, I think a player like Overshawn, which I like the player to be able to come in and contribute and as like maybe a starter if someone got hurt. No, I mean I think we're looking at like Jabril Cox or somebody over him at this point. That's how I feel about his readiness. So that makes me a little concerned. And that's why I'm just so down on the pick. It's just, I feel like there's too much development that has to happen for him to be a contributor right away.
Tony.
Yeah, so I understand exactly what Danny's saying. I'm a little more bullish on Overshown, but my situation is what Danny says makes a lot of sense to me. I would have loved Overshown later, right? I would have loved him in the 4th or the 5th round at that 90th pick. And I know we're splitting hairs here, but at the 90th pick, you want somebody like Danny says, a little more developed, somebody who's a little more ready to come in and help you. You know, a top 100 pick. I want to cash in on the top 100 picks now. You know, we got a guy here who I think has a promising future. I think has a lot of moldable traits. A guy who is another freak athlete. Like the Cowboys definitely, specifically Dan Quinn, draft guys with a lot of traits, a lot of athletic ability. He definitely fits in that mold. But you know, I'm not looking for the 3rd round to have special teams demons. I want a guy who can, you know, plug in with Damone Clark and plug in there with, you know, Leighton Vander Esch and just have a nice solid core at that 2nd level. And you know, I don't know if year 1 he's that guy.
So Mike the movie junkie first says people said the same thing about Deron Bland until he got on the field and started making plays. To your point about DeMarvion Overshown, Danny, and I don't have a problem with the comment at all, but like you can find an example of anything in the 100-year plus of NFL history, right? Like there's an example of the number 1 overall pick totally hitting and the number 1 overall pick missing and Mr. Irrelevant. Like you can find data or whatever to support whatever argument you want, but that is very fair. So, and we've all talked obviously about how the Cowboys deserve the benefit of the doubt. So Opera Doc has a super chat. I'm going to set up Opera Doc's first comment first. Says the only position of dire need going into the draft was left guard, and we have totally ignored it. The super chat, Brandon, set from Opera Doc. Thank you very much, Opera Doc. Says they have a serious needed offensive line, and they have not even remotely addressed it. Counting on Tyron or anyone on our bench is just foolish. I think that we would all offer that, you know, the Cowboys did have a need at defensive tackle. They had a need for a run-stopping defensive tackle specifically, and they did address that in Mazi Smith. But they have ignored, to this point, Brandon, offensive line, which tells us that they must believe more in their internal options than we do.
Yeah, and it's something that we talked about last night with the crew, and you were saying that for you, and I know Tony was in the chat on how the lineup of Tyron Smith, Tyler Smith at left tackle, left guard, it's like when Tyron Smith is healthy, you want to put him at left tackle. I know I was a little more down on the idea, but as I kind of start seeing people fall off the board, guards are starting to leave, I'm coming around to the idea like, yes, that is best case scenario right now. Like a healthy Tyron Smith at left tackle and a healthy Tyler Smith at left guard. And then, you know, you see with free agency, undrafted free agency, guys sometimes can fall. Maybe the Cowboys make a trade before the season with a 2024 pick. So I don't think it's necessarily over. There might be even somebody out there like they did with Anthony Barr or a Jason Peters, where it could be a vet that's waiting to go into training camp, you know, once it gets towards the end, and then you can have that as sort of your backup vet presence. But I think as it stands right now, if they don't take in an offensive lineman, I'm coming around to the idea of if Tyron's at left tackle and then Tyler at left guard, that is still a really, really good offensive line. It's just, again, if you're walking on thin ice with where Tyron's health could be for the entire season.
I mean, they're in a unique spot, and I recognize that we don't have the stability that we would like with the offensive line. We talked about that last night, but I mean, they clearly, you know, they clearly like their options along the offensive line. And Tony, I think that's call it the discourse that we're seeing here within the confines of Cowboys Nation, is that this is not at all the way anybody envisioned it. Anybody who is online, right? Like however that is, whether you're on Twitter or you're on YouTube, whether you're on Instagram, like whether you are in the comment section of BTB. And I'm not saying that nobody mocked Mazi Smith or Luke Schoonmaker or DeMarvion Overshown to the Cowboys, because that happened in spades. But the way this is happening feels very unconventional, Tony. But I do think that isn't because, you know, they're out in left field. It's because they've gotten a lot better at playing the game, you know, and we're kind of having to grapple with that reality in parallel with what they're doing in the draft. That was for you, Tony.
I mean, yes, 100%.
I don't know if
we
that's
may
a
be able to
question,
figure out.
I think you might be on a
Yeah, I
delay.
mean, so
Tony.
yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm having a little.
Okay, you're fine.
I
You're
am.
fine.
I'm a little bit of a delay here.
Okay.
So
I wanted to just address the movie junkie Mike's question quickly and about the, Deron Bland was a great pick, but I mean he was also a 5th round pick, and I would feel a lot differently about Overshawn in the 5th round. But also, you know what? It feels more like a Nashawn Wright pick to me, and who was another 3rd round pick that
your guy.
That was my guy, and and so it's going to be a huge gamble. So we have to wait and see. I'm not discounting him at all, but I did not feel very good about Nashawn Wright, and I do not. And similarly, I don't feel that as good about this pick. But also, too, I wanted to talk about the super chat with the Tyron thing. I really feel, and maybe this is just me, I feel like the Cowboys are putting a lot of extra eggs in the Josh Ball basket. I feel like they might feel that he might be their guy. And I don't know if that's crazy, but it's, people are asking, why haven't the Cowboys addressed this? How come this isn't a bigger need for them? And that could be because we like our guys, and that guy could be Josh Ball. So that's just the feel that I get right now with that. So I don't know if anybody else feels any differently, but
Tony, if you have a point on this, I want to pose 2 questions. So if you want to reiterate or talk about what Danny was saying, I'll let you go.
yeah, I just real quick, there. I guess the problem is, I think, sorry for the internet earlier, but the old line as a whole, where we were like, everybody assumed the left guard was going to be, attacked. We're going to find a left guard. It's going to be figured out, no problem. But I think what you said, Brandon, was this offensive line. If you look at the names as a whole, you feel pretty good about it. But there's so many different variables. Like, can Tyron Smith stay healthy? Are they going to do the right thing and move Tyler Smith to left guard? Like, where's Terrence Steele's development? So if you're looking at, that's 3 of the 6 major guys in play to get some playing time. Like, where's Matt? Well, let's go in his development and his injury situation. So in a perfect world, let's say everybody stays healthy. I mean, it could be a solid offensive line, but that's not reality, and you can't live like that. So you would hope that they would be able to address it. And as we get later in the 4th round, that looks more like what's actually going to have to happen, because these playmakers are plug and play guys. It's few and far between as we get deeper into this.
So RJ, I wrote down like 3 potential questions, and this is sort of like around the what we're talking about. When we're looking at offensive line right now, and Danny brought up linebacker, and this is for the entire group, where would we feel comfortable with not addressing those 2 positions in the 4th round? Will we say that it's like, okay, the linebacker depth, like everything has injury questions with Leighton Vander Esch. You don't know what you're going to get in Damone Clark and Jabril Cox. And then on the opposite side with the offensive line, you're not sure what you have. So if you were to take one, because I think if the Cowboys took a linebacker here, I'd feel a little bit better about that. But then counter to that, if they took an offensive lineman, I feel better about their depth. Where do we think that the best value is with the players that are available?
I mean, I think it's difficult to just look at value, right? Like that's like the premise of this whole draft for the Cowboys is like, because you do have to marry a little bit of need. I mean, looking at the consensus scan board hasn't updated for me. Thank you, Bear. He's pretty pumped about the Roschon Johnson thing. If it wasn't obvious, I mean, I think we all probably feel better about the group as a whole. Like, and I think it's difficult for people to grade the pick specifically. Everybody wants to keep grading it in context with the whole class. If they come away with some interior offensive line help, so that's my answer. I guess is it's probably guard. And as I say this, Calvin Watkins just tweeted out it's day 3 of the draft, and I still don't know who the starting left guard is for the Dallas Cowboys. I kind of disagree with that. Because it's Tyler Smith, right? Like, and I come back to it, and I am in no way the like, let's just completely trust the front office and give them all of our trust, but they kind of want it that way, right? Like they're kind of done with that. I saw Bob Sturm had a tweet about this yesterday, that the sort of media leaks from the Jason Garrett era appear to be over. Like they're a more difficult, Rubik's Cube to solve than they've been in the past. And I think that uncomfortability is what's stirring underneath this. That was the question I was positing to you a little while ago, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, right? There isn't a known. Like, even last year was like, it felt like Tyler Smith was kind of like who they honed in on, but even since from that point on, it's buttoned up. So now we think and we perceive what is value and what they may want to attack, and then it looks completely different. I mean, that is a credit to them in kind of controlling their own narrative. And I know depending on who you ask, there was a little bit of a smokescreen with the tight end in the first round, made the Bills come up. But so it's a different way to operate than we're used to, like you said, with the Jason Garrett era.
Danny, I know you tweeted back at Bob on Friday and disagreed with that. You talked about how the Tyler Smith thing obviously is a great example. That was really chalk for the Cowboys, but they have been kind of, I think back to 2020. If you follow, not you, Danny, but if anybody follows the Cowboys really closely, Friday mornings feature Jerry Jones's one of his bi-weekly appearances on 105.3 The Fan, and that sometimes happens in parallel with Mike McCarthy's Friday press conference. And Jerry Jones did his hit on the fan and said Terrence Steele starting at right tackle. And like 15 minutes later, in real time, Mike McCarthy was giving his press conference and was asked about that and said, we haven't decided who's starting at right tackle. And that, like, I remember that moment so powerfully, and this isn't a shot at Garrett, Danny. I know we joke about this a lot, but like that never happened in the Jason Garrett era, right? Like, I do think that Mike McCarthy has, as he's kind of, grown in tenure with the Cowboys, put the clamps on certain things. And I think that we're seeing that a little bit here.
Yeah, RJ, I just don't agree with that. I feel like I've seen plenty of times that Jerry's made comments, and then on Sunday comes around, and that's not happening at all. I mean, Garrett's doing what Garrett's going to do, so I don't really buy into that. And also, too, like with what Bob's term thing, to me, honestly, I feel like it's gotten worse because I mean, the things, the informations that we have received over since McCarthy has taken over, I feel like we just get more information, and it's almost to the point where I feel like this year we've gotten so much information that now we don't even know what's real. I mean, like the whole tight end thing, we're all thinking it's got to be tight end. It's got to be tight end first, right? And then it wasn't, and we think it's a smokescreen, but it's actually not. It's just, they still had tight end plans. It's just that there's been so much information that you can't really make out what's real or what's not. So I don't feel like they're doing a better job hiding. I think they're still doing Cowboys things, and in fact, I think sometimes they're still talking. They're showing draft cards. They're just, I mean, Jerry's Jerry. I I don't think they're stealthy at all. I just think that they have their players are interested in. We all know who they are, and so we're able to get a good sense of it. And then things start to slowly kind of leak, as it gets closer. So I mean, none of these picks are like where did that guy come from? I mean, they're all players Cowboys were interested in. So I don't really believe in that too much. I just feel like the Cowboys will be the Cowboys.
Brandon, your thoughts?
Yeah. Like I said, I'm trying to find the balance between accepting the value versus leaving positions on the board. I'm trying to just remain optimistic. I think I know night one I wasn't too happy with where they were going with the Mozzie Smith pick. Bless you, Tony. But I do think that where things are at, I think offensive line is the glaring need. And if they have been saying all along, Todd Archer just quote tweeted what we were talking about with Calvin Watkins. Like he said, Tyler Smith, if the season started right now, would be, the left guard. Like they said that. I mean, they also said Terrence Steele will be getting some guard, looks. So maybe we have to take them on their word with that too. Like, is Terrence Steele going to be getting legitimate looks at left guard if we're saying that things are now out in the open? They're a little bit more honest with how they're talking about things. Should we feel better about that and say like, oh, well, they actually probably will be getting Terrence Steele some looks at left guard, whether we like it or not. So, I mean, I think they're just right now going into training camp. If they don't take somebody in the draft at this point, they're going to be throwing a lot of stuff at the left guard position, just seeing if they can get the best 5 available.
Wow. I just saw my friend Will from Will covers the Cowboys across the pond, and he announced the Jets pick, but Will's a 49ers fan. So it's a really interesting situation happening here. He was wearing a Jets shirt. If anybody's watching the broadcast, that's my friend Will holding the microphone. But look, I'll say this. I think that we need to all maybe say something, and that is that the Tyron Smith is really complicating our emotions. That's like, as we kind of tie this subject, tie a bow on this subject, that is causing a really difficult, I don't even want to call it a problem, but it does leave us like we are in this like purgatory of sorts, because to answer the question, like you said, Brandon, it's like, well, Tyler Smith is starting left guard. The immediate follow-up is like, well, what happens when Tyron gets hurt? Like the fact that we have to treat that as an inevitability is what makes this, problematic, as it makes this awkward and clunky. Is, well, okay, then who's your swing tackle? You can't have like an actual true swing tackle because Tyler Smith is your answer at left tackle. So what is your swing tackle? You're like, do you have a swing guard? You know what I mean? Do you have just like a swing left side offensive lineman? That it's a weird spot. I don't know if it's a good problem to have, but on some level, I think the Cowboys might be better off in a simplistic way if they had just moved on from Tyron as a whole, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm a big fan. I'm a proponent of Tyron Smith. I wrote an article early on that like the Cowboys are better worth having him than not having him. I know there's a lot of conversation about just exactly what to do, but I have a hard time putting that man and his pedigree and what he brings to the game on a bench if he's healthy. Now, the healthy part is obviously the variable that's unknown, but if Tyron Smith is healthy, he's my left tackle. You worry about the development of Tyler Smith in the future, because I think Tyler Smith is proven to be a mentally strong kid, right? He, if we remember correctly, the guy was a guard through all camp. And then like 2 weeks before the game, when Tyron Smith gets hurt, like week 1, he's starting at left tackle. So he has the ability to kick inside and outside when he needs to. This may be one of those situations where if the board doesn't fall the way it does, they go to Tyler Smith and say, listen, man, like, get the guard footwork done, get the guard like technique working, because that's kind of what this version 2023 Cowboys needs best to win. Now, again, if Tyron Smith goes down, we've seen Tyler Smith be able to go outside. Matt Willetsko becomes that kind of next guy up. And I've always felt that the Cowboys have had some sort of swing tackle, swing guard-esque. Like there was always 7 guys or so that you felt could come in a different variation of ways. And I wonder if that's just kind of how they're going to approach it this year.
Danny, the comment section kind of agrees here. I'll put Johnny Boys up. Says, mad respect for Tyron Smith, but his injury history is an obstacle to solidifying the offensive line as a unit. That's what I'm saying. Like, you'd almost be better having moved on entirely. Like, because you'd be free to you would have to pick a lane to start kind of building around, so to speak. You've got one. This is not the hokey pokey. You know what I mean? And they do have 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and it is like a hypothetical foot, right? Because we sit here and we're like, well, what if he doesn't get hurt, right? Like, what if the miracle season happens, and then like, what if Tyler Smith gets hurt? Like, they are. It's a house built on sand is probably the best way to put it.
What if Terrence Steele isn't ready for week 1?
That's true too.
No, I totally agree with you. In fact, that's something I was contemplating with earlier in the offseason. But then the Cowboys did a very good job of reconfiguring Tyron's contract. So now at the point where I feel like we're just kind of free rolling. It's like he may play, he may not. We don't expect him to. If he does, great. And the Cowboys aren't eating a lot of money if he can't make it too. So so there's that. And I'm certainly glad to have him if he's available. But we certainly have to prepare for him not being. And it puts us in a tough spot, because I feel like they don't have answers. The one thing I will say about this too is, we are in the 4th round, and a lot of the players we like are not there. But that doesn't mean the Cowboys don't have some guys that they like. And a 4th round resource on an offensive lineman, that's pretty good for the Cowboys. They're really good at evaluating them. They're really good at developing them. So, I mean, I'm not like, it wouldn't be like a player is like, well, that's just a waste, but because I'm a little optimistic there. But I honestly, to me, when I'm looking at the best remaining, there's not one that's popping. There's a handful of players that I like at this spot, but none of them play on a left guard.
So quickly, as we start to transition, the Cowboys are now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks away, I believe. If we look at the last 3 years, and obviously Will McClay's tenure stretches way beyond that, but the McCarthy era and what this coaching staff has sort of been involved with, certainly in the 4th round, the Cowboys have taken an offensive lineman twice in Tyler Biadasz, who they did trade up for. That was the first draft with McCarthy, and Josh Ball 2 years ago. So they're certainly not afraid of it. They've really kind of gone everywhere here. Reggie Robinson obviously was a pick that I think we were all really enamored with at the time. Darius Rush is still hanging out if we want to go the corner route right now. How about, and we've talked about this name a lot, been a very popular, Corey Trice is still there as well, by the way. I think, right, I haven't seen anybody take him from a corner standpoint. But Brandon, how about Tyler Scott, that has been a popular mock name for the Cowboys. They have yet to address receiver. We can have this same conversation about receiver, right? Like, what happens this? What happens that? Blah, 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 blah. Michael Gallup, et cetera, et cetera. So what happens if how would you feel about going receiver here? Although Israel Abanikanda is available well. Danny, you said there's not a lot of names we like. I'd be satisfied with any of the ones I just listed, at least. Brandon.
Yeah, you're saying a lot of names. I'm trying to keep the Voldemort thing on a lid here, where I'm trying not to mention too many people I like until the Cowboys pick. But I mean, that's certainly a name. Both of them that you mentioned, even Abanikanda too. And even Danny mentioned this, where we're looking at all of these names kind of just fall apart and fall off the board, but they might still have a guy that they're circling and saying, okay, if we just wait, if he's going to get there, like, he's our guy. So we have to trust that they know more than we do. We were talking about offensive line. Danny, you mentioned that, like, the names aren't really appealing. I think 9 out of the 12 picks in this round so far have been offensive linemen. So it's like there's been a run. Almost half of the guys that have been picked have been O linemen. So where it stands, I would be very comfortable if the Cowboys took a running back or a wide receiver here. RJ mentioned Scott as a name that I do like. The Cowboys have shown interest in him. He's a big play receiver, smaller, but at this point, you just want to find somebody to give a little juice on offense. And he can be sort of that kick punt returner. If, like, Kevontae Turpin, for whatever it's worth, if he can't get on the field on offense, maybe you take up now 2 positions with one player as opposed to one player and seeing what he can do on offense.
Yeah, just to speak on Scott, I think he fits. He's a player I think that would be the Cowboys' opportunity to get great value. To me, I think this would be very good value for him, and also too, he's a separator. I would be happy with the pick. I feel like there's not a lot of great receiving options here. So really, if you don't take a receiver here, you're probably no better off than with somebody competing with Jalen Tolbert. So Tyler Scott, certainly, he's on my list of players. And there, as RJ mentioned too, there are a couple of running backs, not only with Israel, but the Zach Evans too.
Right.
We know the Cowboys are interested in him. So there's a couple of them that we could get our running back here. So those are just, and like you mentioned too, Corey Trice is a player that I like as well. So I would say those 4 are probably my top 4 right now as we get closer to the Cowboys pick.
War room is up. Tony, your first thoughts. Brandon, your first thoughts.
I was gonna say I've seen 2 people with their head down, but I think they might be laughing, not really upset. But I was kind of concerned with that. If they're going to be upset with who's not available, then I mean we should. But I don't think that's the case.
Tony, you live in the Northeast. Brandon, you do as well. It looks like Steven and maybe, I don't know about Mike, but going with the vest over a long sleeve button-up shirt. Kind of a popular look in your neck of the woods, would you say?
Yeah, if you're going to like Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard, you might want to throw a little polo with a quarter zip.
Like you're going to like a Friday night, Saturday night dinner, Tony. I could see you, a nice vest, zip up situation, a pocket to put your phone and keys in. You know what I mean? On either side. Maybe you don't want the overwhelming warmness that a full sweater or half zip provides. You go vest.
I think they call it like the frat look up here. So it's there's a little frat boy look to it. But if you care about who I want, I'm looking at wide receiver. I want skill, right? I'll wrap it in a big bow here. Wide receiver, running back, cornerback. The run on offensive line or guard specifically has been pretty damning here. So it's tough for me to kind of go out here and reach for a guard. You want a toy.
You want a toy?
I want a toy. Yeah, exactly. I want somebody to come in, and I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago about Antonio Callaway, competing with Simi Fehoko, Jalen Tolbert. We need somebody to come in here and be another piece to that. Maybe it's A.T. Perry, like you said. Maybe it's Tyler Scott. I'm in on the Darius Rush. I'm in on Corey Trice. So there are some guys. Again, everybody I've named, they haven't even come close to picking. So maybe I'm a fool's errand there, but there are some people I like.
I just want to say something real quick, RJ, just to speak on something you said earlier too. I feel like as we're seeing a bunch of offensive linemen come off the board, I feel like if the Cowboys take their guard right now, then this basically just falls into everything we said before. It's like there's a run on it. The Cowboys get in right at the last of tier, and it just would just like the draft is just kind of dictating where the Cowboys are picking. So I don't know if I'd feel good about that or not, but
I think that's really fair to say, Danny. Like there's not enough data, in my opinion, to fully make that conviction yet. But I agree with you that if they took a guard now, it would be the like, oh, crap. Now, and then it would be literally true that this guard is not going to be available when we come back around in the 5th. Let's get him now. Let's get out. We'll call it a win. et cetera, et cetera. There would I think maybe, there's been a lack of foresight or forward thinking. At least that's the perception. So a lot of people want Deuce Vaughn. David, I'm sorry, Tony. David is giving you 5 points. Get someone to bump some of the receivers that haven't worked out off of the roster. Rick says 3 picks away. The Chargers have taken a wide receiver, Darius Davis, out of TCU. Their second TCU receiver this draft, obviously getting Quentin Johnston on Thursday night. We are 3 picks away, so it is time to name a name. Nobody be afraid, and nobody on our coverage has gotten it right. Like as we've gotten close to a pick, nobody's manifested something. So that being said, Danny, let's start with you. Give us the name. Your number 1 name.
I am gonna go with Abanaconda. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm torn between him and Zach Evans, and it's really, if I knew what the Cowboys were gonna do with Tony Pollard, then I would be able to pick that with more confidence, because I think Evans could be a player that could be their lead guy going forward, and Abanaconda is more like a Pollard, kind of explosive playmaker type of thing. But I'm just gonna say they're gonna take a running back here. That's what I'm gonna say. And it's going to be one of those 2. I picked 2 guys.
We're assigning your name. By the way, my apologies to Chris Holling, who will join us for the 6th and 7th rounds here on the coverage. He did call DeMarvion Overshown to a degree. So, Chris, we'll give you the credit for that. So, great job there. Tony, give us your name. So, we've given Danny Israel Abanaconda. You can repeat. You can pick the same name. So, who do you want to be? Anthony.
It's not who I want to be. I'm just going out on a limb. It's not somebody I would pick. So, I'm going to think that they go A.T. Perry, wide receiver. Got the size, a little different from the Brandon Cook, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup guys they have. I mean, I believe if my stats are right, he's like 6'5", 6'4" ish, like big bodied wide receiver. It's something different. They kind of value the traits. Because I said it, they absolutely won't pick him, but I think they go A.T. Perry.
So a couple of quick things. First of all, I hadn't seen this story. Did anybody know that Chandler Zavala, who went to the Panthers, that his dad is a chef? Who sent him? Does anybody know this story about the prime rib?
Yeah, I think he was on Top Chef or.
So his dad and his chefdom sent Chandler 20 pounds of prime rib during his freshman year to gain weight, and what a fun adventure that must have been. He gained 40 pounds off of the prime rib.
I love prime rib.
So how do you even ship that? I mean, that would be complicated. So Brandon, first of all, could we get a trade siren, because the New Orleans Saints traded up for pick 127? So we'll see who they ultimately pick. It is a quarterback, Jake Haener. So we have seen a quarterback go off the board for the first time since Hendon Hooker.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Then we're good to go. We have one more pick left. The Rams are up before the Cowboys. So, Brandon, who is your name that you want for Dallas?
I'm not going to name somebody that I want because I'm not going to play that game. But I'm going to name somebody who I think they could take, and that would be Aiden O'Connell. I mentioned, we were talking about, I don't like it, but if they know that the backup quarterback run is starting with Haener, and O'Connell's sort of somebody that they've been interested in, that would be a name that if they want to get him now, they don't think he's going to be there in the 5th round. They might do the same concept and then try and do it. I don't like the idea of that happening, but that's somebody who I can see them taking.
I'm going to go. We've had 3 different answers. I like the A.T. Perry call, Tony. I'm going to go with Tyler Scott. I'm going to say that's my guy. That's my pick right here. The War Room camera is up. We are 1 pick away. I have not seen anything about the Rams yet.
I'm changing my pick to Zach Evans, by the way.
Oh no, Danny, that does not feel good.
I don't want to jinx my guy. I don't want to jinx my
the
guy.
vibes around changing this close are not a good thing, in my humble opinion.
I panicked.
I don't know, man. The War Room looks very calm.
Do we know who the Saints picked?
Jake Haener.
Oh, okay.
Oh, right. Wait a minute. Oh, my gosh. And the Lions, Ian Rappaport just tweeted this out. The Lions are trading DeAndre Swift, which is not a shocker, but to the Philadelphia Eagles. So another Georgia
You're kidding
Bulldog.
me, right? You're
no,
kidding
I'm
me.
not.
Oh, my goodness.
The Eagles, man, they do this well.
Stop the show.
Yikes! Another Georgia Bulldog.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh man, so
it's
they
really
don't
annoying.
they don't need to get Bijan because they got. Oh, this is just.
I mean, the Jahmyr Gibbs pick was really frustrating and annoying on just like a philosophical level, but it is even more so now because it sent us to this reality where DeAndre Swift was a trade option. I will say the Lions coaching staff had like a small falling out with DeAndre Swift, so certainly not categorizing him as a character concern, but
Detroit is terrible. They will never roar again.
Yeah, Detroit has really. I mean, I said this on Thursday night. They had the whole world, the whole NFL world wanted to love them, and they just set it all on fire.
Yeah, and this could be a perfect fit for DeAndre Swift because he's actually from Philadelphia. So like, and now he's coming home. He's playing for his home team. The Eagles are, the Philadelphia Bulldogs. This is a problem, but it is what it is.
We have a super chat from Dr. Trevor Pellegrini that says Corey Trice is the Cowboys pick. I hope so. I would be totally fine with that, but it would continue to ignore the offensive side of the ball, which I think would upset people on some level. Chris says that he guesses the Cowboys have to trade for Derrick Henry now. Yeah, what a bummer. And what a screw them for doing this right before the pick that we're all like kind of waiting to, inflate this thing with some hope.
Keeping their name in the Twitter sphere as the Cowboys are going to be on the clock. That's usually how it works.
I do, it is worth wondering, do the Eagles make this trade if not for Mozzie Smith? Right? Like maybe they're like, okay, we really got to, go after that. I mean, they had a need at the position, they fixed it. So
But I think it's the same thing where they don't. I mean, this also shows, and it looks like the War Room cam is back up. I think it's a case where they don't trust Penny to stay healthy. I mean, they shouldn't. Like that was their running back one. I mean, that's not a case. That's not somebody you want. But I mean, they now have two injury-prone running backs, so I don't think they're necessarily set. I mean, they have Gainwell as somebody potentially. But yeah, I'm trying to see if anybody's in the room.
We don't know what the Eagles traded yet, and the Los Angeles Rams, I think, we have another Georgia Bulldog off the board, and it is quarterback Stetson Bennett.
Wow,
who is headed to the LA Rams.
I told you, run on backup quarterbacks. Get ready.
This would feed the same ideology that Danny talked about, though. Like if the Cowboys took a guard, to your point, to the same point, if the Cowboys took a quarterback now, it would be, it would feed that reality. Wow. I don't know how to feel about a lot of things. The compensation for DeAndre Swift, a 2025 4th round pick.
You can trade picks that far.
Now you can, because we're actively in the 23 draft.
Yeah.
And this year's 7th round. Oh, and moving up in this year's 7th round. So
basically nothing.
Yeah. so
But
by 2025, Howie Roseman will have accrued 100 5th round picks. So I mean, it's really not that big of a deal.
So Swift's played 2 seasons, right? Is he halfway through his rookie deal? So they're basically getting him for 2 years for. Is that how I'm saying it? Was he a first rounder? I can't remember.
I think he was second.
Second. Okay. So they're basically getting him for 2 years. I mean, that's great value. I mean, I like Swift. I think he's a good player. And I'm not liking this at all. This is terrible.
What's the most annoying thing to me is like all the like Eagles and Howie Roseman love on the internet is just at an all-time high. The Cowboys are clapping again. They really took the wind out of our sails. The War Room is happy, at least. Maybe they're celebrating DeAndre Swift head into the Eagles because they're like, we got Mozzie, so we're good. You know what I mean? Like, who cares? But it was a 7th round pick swap. They didn't even have to give up their 7th round pick this year.
All right, Will McClay is on the phone.
Yeah, but they'll be hating life in 2025.
Oh. It looks like the Cowboys are making a pick. Go ahead, Brandon.
I was gonna say, every time I try and justify like night one when we were saying, like, everybody was saying the Eagles are having a great draft, Cowboys they're just 2 steps behind. Like, the gap has now just increased away from the argument, so I can't really make that point anymore. Where it's like, no, trust what they're doing, and the Eagles are having like a heck of a and I guess you could do that now that you know where you're going to be at with quarterback. You lock up your guy, and now you can kind of just gamble the future because you know he's going to be around. So just kind of like a really push the chips towards the center of the table move.
The Cowboys, so we've all named our guy, but
we haven't seen any position coach come in the room, right? So we don't have no idea who.
Which I saw John Fossil on in the war room when they made the Overstrom pick, because I guess for special teams, he is a tall, skinny dude. I didn't realize that, but he was
call
like
him Bones for a reason.
I know, but he was like almost as tall as where the top of the star is in the war room. I was shocked.
When I saw Fossil yesterday, I was thinking it was Roshan. At first, until Quinn came on.
A great tweet from Ralph Acciano, who covers covers the NFCs as a whole for Fox Sports. Again, it's a joke, but tweeted, "I know Nick Sirianni's coming off of a Super Bowl season, but are we sure that Howie Roseman isn't trying to fire him to hire Kirby Smart?" That's really funny, given everything that's happened at this point in time. No word on what the Cowboys are doing, except for Jerry's now on the phone.
So somebody's talking to pretty at length. There's Schottenheimer in with Mike McCarthy.
Okay, we've got a pick. We've got a pick. So everybody stay calm here. I'm working on getting everything prepped. I will say I think people will be satisfied or will be happy, but it's not anything we've talked about. I'll give you that clue.
I mentioned him briefly.
The insider strikes again.
I'm coming. Give me 1 second here. It's a difficult name to type. Like, it stretches your abilities on the keyboard. So we're working, and
it's familiarity though.
It is. The Dallas Cowboys have selected a pass rusher, San Jose State defensive end Viliami Fehoko. Tony.
It's a pass rusher, right? We were looking at cornerback, we were looking at wide receiver, running back. I don't hate the pick. I mentioned him as somebody that I would be okay with. He wasn't in my top of guys I wanted right there, but it's hard to argue with him. I'm trying to see if I can pull up his stats here, but ultimately what I know about him, I think he's a quality guy. He maybe is an intriguing pick, but they could have went any different way here. I'm interested to see how you guys feel about it.
Danny.
I like it. So, I wrote about him. I've talked to actually Talanoa Hufanga's dad, because they're both, Tonga players, and he's has some insight with Junior Fehoko as well. I wrote an article about him, and things I do like about him is he's just a football player. He's just got those intangibles. He's a relentless player. He fights with his hands. The only thing that I don't particularly care for, and which is why I think he may slide. Besides he's a little bit of a tweener. To me, he fits more like a 3-4 defensive end versus I don't know where he would go with Dallas, but Quinn could find a role for him. But he more lunges versus bending. I don't see a lot of bendability with him. And he does over pursue. But he's an aggressive player, and he's just a guy who just makes plays. He's in the backfield. He makes plays. I really like it. You got a good football player here. I don't know what he can become, but I certainly like the upside of this pick. So I like he's on my mini board. He's a player that I'm interested in. So I have no problem with this.
Brandon.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't know much about him, and I think, like Danny mentioned, the tweenerness of it is everything that I've heard and I've seen. I've read the articles and everything that you guys put up. So it's an intriguing name. I guess the one thing would be, I'm trying to hang the hat on also that the fact of what we talked about early in the draft is that the Cowboys have nailed their 4th round picks. So if this follows the track record of everything that they sort of established over the years of drafting really good value in the 4th round, that maybe he's not on the radar of a lot of other teams, and the Cowboys are like, no, like this is a really good player, similar maybe like a Tony Pollard when he was drafted. Everybody was like, oh, well, the Cowboys had him circled, but maybe not the rest of the league. Maybe he falls into that category. And that's why I was going to ask you, Danny, is, if he is more of that tweener, edge, or linebacker, like right now as he stands, is he a linebacker for the Cowboys or is he an edge?
He's honestly, I almost, when I looked at him, I think, could he be a 3-tech? I mean, he's a little bigger than edge. He's not he don't have the build for it. But like I say, he actually fits more like a 3-4 defensive end. But I feel like the way Quinn will use him, I mean, he'll line up everybody all over the place. So I do think that there's a role for him. But as far as I don't think of him as an edge rusher, really. Like I say, he doesn't have good bend to him. He's just a real aggressive player, and he'll fight. A high motor guy for sure. But where he exactly fits is going to be something we'll just have to keep tabs on, because I don't have an answer to that. I'm not sure. But good football players are good football players, and similar to like Talanoa, who dropped in the draft too because of some, like, where does he fit in athleticism, trait stuff, just the tangibles to just make plays. And you really like players like that, and the Cowboys got themselves one of those players.
To Danny's point, if you don't mind, I have his height, his weight, some pre-draft analysis, if I can go over that. 6'4", 276. He's a bigger guy, like Danny said, tweener between that edge and interior kind of defensive line guy. And his pre-draft analysis from Steve Mensch of ESPN. Fehoko makes quick work of tight ends defending the run and rushing the passer. He's a disruptive run defender who anticipates the snap, fires off the ball, and knocks blockers back. Fehoko is a power rusher who chases with good effort, but he's not a polished counter puncher. So
he is not the same athlete from a testing standpoint as their first 3. Like the first 3 kind of have that common denominator that they did test very well. So this does seem more like a I'm in love, really Dan Quinn. So this is more like human eye test, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So we've talked about edge rush and how that's an important position. Dan has a good comment here. It says funny, but I trust the team on this. Like funny is not maybe funny has like a harsh connotation. It's a little bit unique, a little bit off the board, a little bit off the wall. I think what we are seeing though is they trust the offense. I mean, they're really trusting what they've got and Mike McCarthy to kind of take care of everything. So that's a good thing, I suppose.
We got another Fehoko.
Just saw a tweet from Marcus Mosher. I don't have access to the PFF scores on this, but Fehoko was in the 99th percentile in terms of run defense grades. So that's, 5 minutes ago, the Philadelphia Eagles just traded for DeAndre Swift. So that's what you're doing. I mean, you're trying to stop the run, and that's been what they have really struggled at, and that's been their limit. We know they can rush the passer. We know they can sack the quarterback. They had 1 million sacks last year. They're clearly devoting now resources towards inhibiting the run game.
Yeah, one thing too is, anybody a little bit, do you have an opinion about, like, this is we expected offense heavy here, where the Cowboys are defense heavy. It's like they believe in Prescott. Like they feel like their offense problems are going to be solved. They got Brandon Cooks, and they feel like that's going to work itself out. There's no urgency here, they got him a safety blanket tight end, but that's it. Everything else has been, let's just keep vamping, this defense up. We already a great defense. We're going to be even better. We're solving some of our problems. They're getting better with stopping the run with the Mozzie pick. So it's like they're just putting everything on defense. Does it make you feel better or worried about like how the Cowboys have gone in this draft with offense versus defense?
To answer your question directly, like I wrote an article saying I thought this was going to be an offensive forward draft. I really did. I thought they've done enough on defense that they could, pick and choose who they wanted offensively to kind of help and build around Dak Prescott. Now that's to say that, not to say they haven't done that with Schoonmaker and, Brandon Cooks and stuff, but this is definitely a little off the script of what I anticipated. Right. And I think that's kind of what we've seen, the common theme here in 2023 here is the Cowboys are going to do what they want. I mean, we can have preconceived notions or ideas of how they can handle it, but they've obviously have their own script and they walk to the beat of their own drum.
Brandon.
Yeah, it's a funny point because I mentioned at the very top, Tony and I have been in lockstep with this, where we really thought that this would be a very offensive heavy draft, and it's not a. I was trying to think of a better word because I don't want it to come across as being like insulting, but I want to know if it's like an arrogance aspect of like if Mike McCarthy says to himself like, no, I trust the offense, I trust what we're doing. We've already had like concept talks, like what we're doing with the offense. We traded for Brandon Cooks, like that's all we need. Maybe they feel like Brandon Cooks is really going to put this team over the top. And then they really do trust the offensive line. And so they're just trying to add more pieces to defense where we thought at last year, after maybe the final stretch of the season, we were saying the Cowboys were struggling with run defense. Well, Fehoko, Smith, Overshown, like those are three players, maybe not so much Overshown, but at least with Fehoko and Mozzie Smith, those are two players that are really good against the run. So if they want to get better, Dante Fowler, Dorrance Armstrong, they're not the best on the edge when it comes to defending the run. So if you could put Fehoko on the field with the DeMarcus Lawrence on the edges and put Hankins and Smith in the middle, like you got yourself like a really good defensive line for defending the run. So if that's what they're going to do right now, and seeing within the division, DeAndre Swift, you have Brian Robinson in Washington, and then you also have Saquon Barkley. You need to defeat the running backs within your division, and I think they're trying to do that as well.
Tony, when the Cowboys took Mozzie Smith, Micah Parsons was on the Bleacher Report show, and we played that clip. And at the end of his like overall rant, obviously AJ Brown that was there as well. He said, "No more QB sneaks," and that was kind of like a funny throwaway line. I think that's like, again, it's a funny sort of microcosm, but I do think that that's emblematic of what the Cowboys are trying to do, right? Like enough of us getting beat in that way. Like I recognize that's one very microscopic way of looking at it, but they're not going to get beat that way anymore. They feel like they have the secondary to run with receivers. They're all about now finding the beef to be able to slow down the run. And it's not just Philly, it's San Francisco. They have Christian McCaffrey now. I mean, again, Philly just added DeAndre Swift, and that's unfortunate, but that's been their bugaboo. I saw Bob Sturm wrote about this when it came to Mozzie Smith on Friday. Does anybody know how many times I know Aaron Rodgers isn't at the same place in his career, but how many passes he completed when he beat the Cowboys, when the Cowboys lost in November? Anybody remember?
Maybe 18.
It was 14.
It wasn't that much.
It was 14. And because the Packers knew, and we have seen teams, and to me, these picks, the Mozzie Smith pick, to your point, Tony, the DeMarvion Overshown pick, and now the Junior Fehoko pick, they serve to elevate Micah Parsons. Danny, you said the Cowboys seem to trust Dak Prescott. This is how do we get Micah Parsons help, and how do we help unleash him? Because we saw the Eagles in the first game against Dallas exposed Micah, right? We're just going to run right at you, and that's how we're going to neutralize you. And they did it. And not that Micah was bad against the Eagles by any stretch, but he was limited. And so Micah is Superman. And this is a horrible analogy because the movies are terrible, but the Cowboys are like, we got to get Batman. We got to get the Flash. We got to get Aquaman. We got to get Wonder Woman. We got to get all of them because Superman on his own cannot. I don't know what the bad guy's name is in the DC universe, but you get my point, Danny Phantom.
I do. I just think they want to go from great defense to elite, and I think that they're working their ways towards this. And you're absolutely right. The Cowboys, as good as they were last year, they had some issues with stopping the run. The teams knew that, and they would take away the Cowboys' ability to rush the passer by getting themselves in those manageable third down situations. Cowboys want no part of that. They want them in third and long, and they're going to make sure that they got the early down players in there to do that. And honestly, I'm really happy about the Cowboys just beefing this defense up, because if the Cowboys again are one of the better defenses in the league, and this is 2 years in a row, they're like number 2 DVOA, and the Cowboys are going to be better. And then you just throw that Prescott over there with CD, and I feel, and Tony Pollard's coming back, I feel like the Cowboys will be good enough to just like be able to win football games, because they're going to have elite defense and a wild card offense that can be just sensational at times. So I'm happy about the resources on defense.
Danny, I'm with you. Sorry to cut you off, RJ. Like I'm with you, but I saw a tweet that was interesting, right? Like we all know Kansas City Chiefs, they employ the best quarterback in football, right? It's Pat Mahomes, but they still are aggressive in finding wide receivers. They shipped off Tyreek Hill. It seems like they've tried to add 2 or 3, more pieces. They're not satisfied, and it's right. There's something to be said about defenses winning championships and building around a strength and Dan Quinn and stuff like that. But it's almost like the reason why somebody like me and maybe Brandon, I don't want to speak for him, but we are very offense forward. It's like, okay, we've seen Dak Prescott, what he can do. Like when he's at the top of his game, he can play it with the best of them. But why not try to make that easier, right? I know signing Brandon Cooks and maybe Schoonmaker, they feel that way about it, but this is a draft where we're 4 picks in and only one of them are an offensive guy. So I don't want to sound ungrateful, but I almost would love to see them try to do more for Dak. And maybe that's a different conversation for a different day.
I think that I agree with Danny that the Cowboys, I wouldn't even say want to become an elite defense because they already are. I think the Cowboys were the exception to the rule a year ago, obviously, in not having regression, right? That's what we hear all the time. You're going to have regression from a turnover takeaway standpoint, and they didn't do that, and kudos to them. But there is regression coming. At a certain point, the sacks are going to deteriorate. The turnovers are going to go away. That is not going to happen. And so what I think the Cowboys are doing is they're trying to fight off the regression. They're trying to continue to hold because I agree with you, Danny. I think they trust the offense. I think they trust Dak Prescott. They know that is there. They know that is enough. They know that adding I was literally about to say no. They know that adding Tyler Scott doesn't make the difference. That's who the Bears just drafted this as I said that. But so they know that they have done what they can on offense. That the ball is quite literally in Dak Prescott's hands at this point in time. What they need is to counter. They have lost many an opportunity, not just in the Dak Prescott era, but in franchise history, because they did not support their quarterback appropriately, and not just on the offensive side of the ball. And so today's NFL, we're seeing a lot of teams get really good at running the ball, and that is the emphasis here. And so I do think, Danny, that this pick deviates from what you suggested, that if the Cowboys went guard, we talked about quarterback, that would prove they were just kind of getting in line and following the train. This is them. They're clearly doing their own thing now. We have enough evidence to be able to make that conclusion.
Yeah, I totally agree. They are doing. I mean, they're taking their guys. They love these guys. We know that they were interested in these players, and consensusly they were stacked around further. But the Cowboys love these players, and I'm not going to complain about any player that Dan Quinn loves. If you want to bring in a player, I don't care where you draft him. If he loves Mozzie where they got him, then I do too. And same thing with Fihoko. And I feel like just the Cowboys it takes a whole football team to win, and they are deciding these are the things that we need to do to make our football team better. And honestly, if you look at the resources they have, they just can defensively, they can really match up in a lot of different ways. They can, if teams want to attack you certain ways, the Cowboys can go with this grouping. We have Dono back, and it makes me feel good because if we look at the 90s Cowboys and we know about Aikman, the triplets and stuff, they won on defense. And the Cowboys they're building this defense to where it's just going to be so strong that, I mean, it can survive when you don't have a quarterback that's maybe he's having an off day or something, and things are not always going right on offense. So I like it. I really want the Cowboys to be a dominant defense this season. They already are really good, and I want to see them go to that next level.
It's strange because we're so used to and so accustomed to offense kind of being the show and offense being the star for the Cowboys, but this is where they're at now. Their superstars are ultimately on the defensive side of the ball. Brandon, thank you for getting this tweet from concerning goodness gracious, concerning Junior.
Fihoko.
Yeah. This is a tweet from Haley Sutton of DallasCowboys.com. He finished his career with 191 total tackles. I mean, his accolades kind of speak for themselves. I think as the initial shock effect is wearing off, Brandon, that we're starting to feel a little bit more. I actually feel very confident about this pick. Again, now that we've kind of contextualized it a little bit.
Yeah, I do. And this is very similar to I want to see if I could find the stats here, but the defensive end for Pittsburgh, Alex Highsmith, this feels very similar to his college career. He came from a small school. He was, I believe, at Charlotte. And when you look at his career, he finished with 47 tackles for loss, 21 sacks. For Fihoko, 46 tackles for loss, 23 sacks. And then I believe total tackles was 115. Like, that was a guy that didn't really blow up until his final 2 years at college. Fehoko, very similar. And it's nobody wanted to take a chance on him. The Steelers took a chance on him in the 3rd round. And within 2-3 years, when TJ Watt goes out, he's leading the team in sacks. So if he has that type of potential to be that type of player where it's a diamond in the rough, somebody that backs up with the production. Because to me, if you're going to project a player, to be a really good player for your defense, you need the production to be backed up from where you're coming from, Mountain West. And clearly he has not only all the accolades, but he has the statistical background to say, you know what, like, we can project this guy to be a very good defender. And if he's a great attitude guy, like Danny mentioned, the sky's the limit for him. If he can develop into an Alex Highsmith type player, I'm all for it, especially in the 4th round.
Tony, how are you feeling now that it's been about 15 minutes?
I mean, I feel good. I mean, this is right on brand with, I think, what the Cowboys have been looking to do. I saw, David Hellman, friend of the show, say, and you mentioned it too, 99 percentile in run defense. Like, that's just the Cowboys' MO. And I also saw, I believe it was John Machota say that they believe that he can put on weight and be a D tackle, kick inside. So I think the fact that he was productive in college and has the position to kind of do different things and show some different versatility, I think that's, right up the Cowboys' alley. So I'm at the point now in the 3rd day where I'm like, this is the part where, like, they've kind of earned the most trust to me, right? This is where they find the Deron Blands and the Dak Prescotts and the Dorrance Armstrongs. And so this is kind of where, when we talk about glowingly about the Cowboys drafts, I think most people speak about this time here. This is where they find some guys, Damone Clark in the 5th round. So if they like Fehoko and they think Junior Fehoko is somebody that can come in and play, who am I to kind of disagree right now?
Danny, is this the Cowboys pick you feel the best about? Relative to context, relative to 4th round and kind of what it makes, what it does and how it makes the overall package look. Again, it's difficult to grade things as they happen, but answer the question, please.
Yes. Well, then, when you take a player that you're already high on, that's really what this is about. I mean, I don't want to be like we're talking out both sides of our mouth here, because we give our opinion about a pick, how we feel, and then we turn around and say, well, we trust Dan Quinn. And of course, I mean, we trust the Cowboys front office and stuff, and absolutely we should. But if you're asking us how we feel on this day about a certain player, then we're gonna say. And with Fehoko, I feel better about this pick versus others because I feel like they're getting him a good spot. It's a player that I liked, but I also feel better in the sense because I'm getting a sense about the Cowboys' strategy here and what they're trying to do, and that makes me excited because I really want them to just be a clamp down defense. And I think Fehoko is a really good player. I mean, he's going to have to develop. He's not going to be making an instant impact by any means. But if you start to look at this Cowboys defensive line now that has Osa, Mazi, Fehoko now, and we also have Jonathan Hankins, and then you turn around, you got with Tank and Micah and Sam Williams. I feel super happy about this.
There was a lot of chaos happening in the back. It's okay. That's the way the draft goes sometimes. There is some chatter, Tony, you mentioned it, about how the Cowboys feel confident that he can put on weight and play some 3 tech. Again, they want some dudes. You know what I mean? Like Philly wants the literal dogs. The Cowboys want their own dogs. I mean, they are. I'm trying to find the tweet now. I saw it a moment ago. Friend of the show, Tanner Carlson, in San Antonio, tweeted that the Cowboys are building around Micah Parsons. That's what this kind of feels like. Like it does feel like. I made the Justice League analogy. Like it does feel like, what can we do to give Micah more opportunity? And that's what we've talked. I know I've talked about this with Tom on different shows here on the channel. What they have done is stumbled into a player like Micah, mostly at the quarterback position, and then said, "Go be great. Go show your greatness and carry the team. Make up for the lack of greatness around you." Instead of that, they're saying, "We're going to give you more so that you can do more."
Conversely, how they handle Dak Prescott.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, because they did trade for Brandon Cooks, right? Like we do have to say that. I mean, so they've given him Brandon Cooks this offseason. They've also obviously now given him Luke, Schoonmaker. And so that's a thing. They also, you could argue, took away Zeke Elliott. They have improved the explosiveness of the offense in unconventional ways.
Yeah, and so I agree. I think it was more of an aggressive statement than it's probably than factual, but I think that the Cowboys understood maybe they were better than anticipated last year, and you see them with the T.Y. Hiltons and trying to be more aggressive about adding talent. So yeah, I think what you're saying about Michael Parsons, build around him, Dak Prescott, they think they can build up, vice versa. But I think it's not a perfect analogy, is what I said.
Okay, let's see here. Right now, Brandon, Tony, you're going to run the show. Danny and I have to step away for just a bit. When we come back, we expect, Danny, that these two dudes have not blown the whole place to smithereens. Is that correct?
Fingers crossed.
Okay, Brandon, Tony, we'll see you on the other side.
All right, so Tony, let me just adjust the screen here because no, we're perfect. Okay, because I know normally it'll just split it up. But so we have Aiden O'Connell going to the Raiders to end the 4th round. So the player that I've been trying to cast off and kind of use our bad juju against it worked. So we don't have to worry about that. The Cowboys still have a long ways to go until pick 35, pick 169 of the 5th round. So we talked about offensive players with regards to, running back, wide receiver. They've addressed defense a lot more in this draft than you and I have talked about. Is this almost like you have to address the offense just at some position, whether it's backup quarterback that you want to develop maybe on the bottom of the list, but wide receiver and running back?
I mean, you're asking me, and we both agree. Like, we really thought it was gonna be an offense-led thing. So my easy answer is yes. Now, will they? I don't know. I mean, I want to sit here and say, it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be good value, but it doesn't matter, right? They're gonna take
Yeah.
their guy. They have a role that they have a fit they're looking for. Fahoko kind of fits into that 3 tech, and overshown as somebody that they feel good about. So it really doesn't matter. So yes, in a long roundabout way to say, do I think they need to address offense? I mean, I sure hope so. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I think they should.
There are 2 questions in the chat here. One from Johnny Boy RN. He says, "Are we bringing back Hilton?" And then somebody, let me see, Patrick says, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it still possible that Zeke comes back? So with 2 Cowboys that, of course, Zeke was on the roster last year, but then recently released, but Hilton was somebody that they brought in late in the year. Like, there are still pieces out there that if they wanted to bring people back, they could, to fill the roles of, depth pieces. With regards to Hilton and Zeke, are those 2 players that A, you would want back, and then B, you think would come back?
It hurts me to say, but Hilton probably more than Zeke. I guess we'll see over the next 3 rounds exactly if this is plausible or doable at all. And I promise you, if the Cowboys go this whole draft without taking a single running back, that flame is going to be stoked. The T.Y. Hilton one, I don't know. I think he's a veteran guy who enjoys his time off. So I don't know if that is a thing, if we'll even see him in a training camp or even in the first part of the season. So I think that one we can kind of shelf that. I don't know what the validity is on that. But yeah, I still think that running back will be addressed at some point over the next 3 rounds, and that will kind of put to bed the Ezekiel Elliott conversation. And I wouldn't mind to see there's some wide receivers out there. I mean, it's not the best top heavy wide receivers, but there are some guys who have been productive in college that can come in and compete. And that's all what you're really looking for now.
And when we do our mid-season bye week episode like we did last year with preseason headlines that we try and predict and get correct, I think the Antonio Callaway would be one that you would love to see work out, in your favor.
Yeah. I mean, him, Fahoko, there's guys, but I think Antonio Callaway, to get off of draft for a second, is somebody who's been productive in this league. It's not on the field that's been its problem. It's off the field. So if he got his head on straight and the Cowboys found a way to get him involved, maybe they do see a guy duking it out here. Maybe that's why they're not reaching for a wide receiver or taking one early. There may be some guys on this roster that maybe we slightly forgot about or slightly kind of have put to bed, and they feel differently about it.
And Kevin says Zeke more than Hilton, so kind of the reverse of what you were saying. And then Rick also says that the Gophers running back Mo Ibrahim is still available. So there still are some running backs that are available if the Cowboys want to address. I think maybe Zach Evans might still be around, the Ole Miss running back. Abandoconda's still on the board as well, somebody that we just talked about at the last pick. And it could be a case similar. I know you weren't on the cast last night, but we were thinking that The Cowboys, the reason why they took Schoonmaker in the second round as opposed to the third is because they thought he wouldn't get there in the third. So it was reverse of kind of what happened with Jalen Tolbert and Sam Williams last year, where they were comfortable taking Tolbert in the third because they knew Sam Williams wouldn't last. So maybe that's the same case where one of these running backs, they say, listen, we knew he was going to be here in the fifth round. Like you have Abanikanda, Eric Gray, Dwayne McBride, the running back out of UAB, Chase Brown out of Illinois, Evans out of Ole Miss, Deuce Vaughn out of Kansas State, and then also Chris Rodriguez, the running back out of Kentucky, and then Kenny McIntosh. I mean, we don't need the Eagles taking more Georgia guys, but what have you looked at McIntosh? I know you're a Bulldogs guy, but like, what would he bring to the Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going down the list here because you were talking about McIntosh. Like, there's legitimately like 10 running backs that are like, I'd bring in and feel pretty good about it, right? Get him in here, see if they can help. But McIntosh, just looking at him, 6 foot, 204 pounds. He's kind of an elusive guy. He's got some skill. He can be a good, reliable receiver out of the backfield. He's just he makes defenders miss. So like if you're gonna get somebody in the 5th or the 6th round, you could do worse than Kenny McIntosh. But other than that, too, I mean, Zach Evans, Chase Brown, Dwayne McBride, Eric Gray, like you mentioned, like Kenny McIntosh, I'm cool with it, but there are also like 3 or 4, maybe 5 guys that I'd be cool with too. So maybe the Cowboys look at that board and say, listen, we're going to touch running back, but there's no reason to press about it right now. We got about 6 or 7 guys we'd feel comfortable taking.
So here is something that Todd Archer just tweeted out. He said Patriots drafted, of course, Chad Ryland in the 4th round. Would have been a Cowboys option if he was there. And, of course, Jake Moody was gone last night in the 3rd. So now with Ryland gone, do the Cowboys look at the free agent market? Robbie Gould is still available. I mentioned that before the draft, I believe in a few podcasts, maybe a roundtable, that Brian brought us on the draft show. He mentioned that the Cowboys have a plan. John Fossil has a plan with addressing kicker, whether that was in the draft or in free agency. So that might not be somebody on the roster right now that we really necessarily like. I know Tristan Vizcaíno, we appreciate you being a Cowboy, but again, we're just looking at all options here. It's nothing against you. But where the Cowboys stand with kicker, the 2 names in the draft have been taken off the board. Are you leaning more towards, that's one of the last positions that the Cowboys really need to address because it's just they don't have anybody. Are you more comfortable with just bringing in another free agent like they seem to do every year now?
Yeah, I think the guys that were draftable have already been drafted, and I think there's a reason why they went in the 3rd, 4th round, whatever the case may be. So, and me and you, I mean, we were way off. We had Jake Moody in the 7th round. He wasn't even close to that. So, so yeah, I think they may have a plan, and their plan may be undrafted free agent. Their plan may be Robbie Gould. Like, so I'm sure Bones has an idea, and it's in the back of their mind. It's probably something they're not going to like attack aggressively right now. But I do believe when they say that, they're gonna have a plan here, a plan of attack. We just, don't know it yet.
The one thing I wanted to ask with Fossil is we've seen kickers come in and out during his time here with the Cowboys. Greg Zuerlein, of course, was his guy, Brett Maher, and then now it's just unknown with who they bring in. With the uncertainty around kicker and how that the Cowboys have not drafted, I said that years ago, like if we had to do things over again, living in a multiverse of the Cowboys draft, they could have had Tyler Bass, the kicker from Buffalo, and that could have been somebody that they could have been signing a contract to like he did this offseason. Evan McPherson was a guy that they could have had a few years back, I believe in 2021. They haven't addressed kicker because they want to bring in these free agent guys. As Fossil earned sort of this benefit of the doubt to say, well, no, his process is the best thing possible, but is that really what's best for the Cowboys?
It's an interesting question. I mean, John Bones Fossil is definitely one of those guys who is deeply respected within the league, and he's done some things, and they make picks for him, right? You see a lot. I mean, he's in the room for Overshown, and and he's got guys that he appreciates. I mean, I know our plan wasn't Kelvin Joseph to be a special teams guy, but if you look past some of the penalties, he's a heck of a special teams guy. So like he has an eye for this, and I don't know exactly what they're going to do to address it, but this is special teams land right here. You get into day 3, most of these guys are going to make their bones for a bad pun, by being a special teams guy. So I mean, everything that you do here is going to have that factored into mind.
Yeah, I agree. And we're looking in the chat now. Rick also mentioned that Clayton Tune and Darius Rush are gone. Clayton Tune went to Arizona and Darius Rush went to the Indianapolis Colts. Again, Indianapolis just taking advantage of the people who are available. Similarly, and we were talking highly about Filiami Fehoko or Junior Fehoko. with Dan Quinn being able to use these guys and get the most out of them. But we've seen drafts where he took Nashawn Wright and Kelvin Joseph as his guys. And we've seen other picks where if Dan Quinn brings in these guys, it's like, okay, yeah, well, it's what Dan Quinn wants. But if the Cowboys like a, Overshown, like you mentioned, somebody who you might not necessarily would have drafted in the third round, would have maybe drafted in the fourth or fifth. But if Dan Quinn is starting to press on these guys and they don't really turn out to be plus starters, especially early on in those crucial second day picks, similarly with the Fossil argument, now are we starting to see where maybe Dan Quinn's just kind of feeling it a little too much and he's taking these players that shouldn't necessarily be drafted where they are?
This is how my mind works. I'm sitting here and we see all these defensive guys, and I kind of laughed inside my head. I chuckled a little bit because it almost feels like Dan Quinn's leaning on everybody. It's like, what we could use right now? A linebacker. We could use right now? A D tackle. It's like in this Mike McCarthy world where we thought it was going to be an offense-led draft, we still had, Dan Quinn going in there getting, what is it? We're 4 picks in now, 3 out of the 4 defensive players. So you're right. They trust Dan Quinn. He obviously has the air. He's listening. People, they're possessing or taking guys that Dan Quinn likes. It's all on him, right? If we've seen over the last now 3 years where this is Dan Quinn flavor written all over it. So if this defense is elite and it continues to progress in that way, we're going to feel really good about it. If there's some type of regression, we know who we're going to look at when that happens.
Yeah, and Danny, I was just asking Tony 2 questions, and Johnny Boy kind of was touching on it a little bit we were talking about the credibility of John Fossil and Dan Quinn, talking about, them being coaches that go after their guys, right? With kicker, they go after, free agents, Greg Zuerlein, but they haven't addressed it in the draft. They just lost Rylan and Moody as potential draft picks because they haven't picked these types of guys. Now, drafting in the third round a kicker, you can make the argument that that's not valid. But when you look at Nashawn Wright, Kelvin Joseph, Overshown, and Fehoko, I know we were just talking up, but these 2 coaches really have the guys that they want and in their image. But is it starting to be where they're pressing a little bit? And we were talking about this, Tony and I, where they're pressing a little bit too much and they're just avoiding the value in what the board presents.
Maybe it's because, certainly to us because of what we see as value, but clearly these coaches and the scouts, they value the players that they're taking. So I'm sure that, when we're seeing them clapping in the war room, they're thinking they're getting a steal. They have a player that's graded much higher than we have. So I don't think it falls into that category. I do think that the Cowboys are still trusting their board. They're getting players they like. But at the same time, the players they like are players who can contribute on special teams, players that are available. Just all the players with certain traits, long arms, and they're an emphasis on speed. And so they're finding these players, they love them, they rank them, and they're happy when the player they like falls to them. So from our perspective, it looks like they're not getting good value, but and Mike McCarthy even said this himself. I can't remember which reporter asked him a question, but he was like questioning the sexiness of the Cowboys picks, and McCarthy quickly was like, we think they're sexy as hell, and so that's how the Cowboys see it, and I hate beating a dead horse, but they're pretty good at this. This is their wheelhouse. We survived the very the atrocious free agency period with the Cowboys do nothing when we actually got 2 really good veteran players. But now this is where the Cowboys excel, and so it doesn't look like it right now, but it's something that I think again we'll be very happy about as time goes by.
Well, I think to me, there's 2 ways to really look at it, right? Like when they say like, oh, it's sexy as hell, like I expect nothing less, right? They're going to say that. They just took these guys. Like whenever they meet Mozzie Smith in the thing, he's like, man, we've been waiting for you. It's like, it didn't matter who that player was, insert player. They were going to have that same feeling about it. So,
but Tony, they're not going to say, yeah, you know what?
Exactly. That's my point. None of it matters. Like, the positivity is gonna come. All that matters is, using our educated guess. Danny, you do this. You've done this for a long time. You believe in your board. You believe in what you believe in. If you think it's a reach, stand on that. You know what I mean? I feel like if these are reaches here, like, that's totally fine. And if they're wrong and they prove me wrong, like they did with Tyler Smith, then I'm totally on board with that. Like, I love being wrong if it's for the benefit of the Cowboys. So, them being positive about it is not anything that I'm putting any real stock in, So I do think that this draft has been different. I do think this draft is attacked much different than probably the consensus has thought it was going to be. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't think that's even really. Who cares, right? At the end of the day, what are the results? Where do we end up after this? So if it works out positively, then win a Super Bowl in the next year or two, then okay, then I was wrong.
So, really quickly, very similar to what we were talking about, Tony. David Moore had a tweet that just came out as a surprising stat. He said Mike McCarthy became a head coach for his offensive acumen. And he said since he's joined the Cowboys, the organization has taken 31 players in the draft, with 3 more on tap this afternoon. They currently have a tally of 20 defensive players as opposed to 11 on offense. So clearly, and we know that in 2020, historically, the Cowboys defense was not good. And 2019, they struggled in that department as well. So I understand that, more so recently, it's been a push towards offense. But back then, it's kind of like, okay, they needed to do that. They need to revamp everything, bring in free agents. But it is still surprising when you look at this season, Mike McCarthy taking over the offensive play calling, Brian Schottenheimer, who I keep forgetting is the offensive coordinator. Like, he's now in the building. And the fact that they're still taking defensive players, with Schoonmaker being the only offensive guy, it is a little surprising when you start looking at the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked about it before. Like, I even put out a tweet or something that was like, this is so Dan Quinn led over since he got here. I think they understood what it looked like under Mike Nolan. It wasn't anything to be proud about. Actually, it was historically bad. So the change and the turnaround since Dan Quinn got here is impressive and is commendable. And if they want to lean defense because that's what they think wins championships and they think that's how they're best suited and that's how the roster is constructed, like, I'm fine with that. But seeing what we have saw thus far has led me to believe, and many others to believe, that this is going to be an offense forward draft with Mike McCarthy calling the shots. It's not Kellen Moore's show anymore. Mike McCarthy is going to add his own flavor. And it just hasn't worked out like that. And, we can debate, we can discuss at the end of the day. We'll see what ends up happening.
Yeah, and even, Patrick brings up a good point of when Mike McCarthy was in Green Bay, they drafted a lot of defense as well. And I know Mike McCarthy didn't really have a huge say over what happened in the draft. Do you think, and Jerry mentioned that he does have a little bit more say so this time around with the Cowboys, but it is certainly interesting. Now, one other question, and Danny, I'll throw it to you first, that I was thinking about as we were going before the Fehoko pick. The Cowboys seem more so now just a little not in disarray. Disarray is a bad word, but to me, I look at the entire overhaul that they just had of their coaching staff. Like, they got rid of a lot of guys who have been here for years, different players that are moving up into different positions. Could that play a factor into why we're looking at this and saying, well, the scouts have their idea of who they are putting on the board, but at the end of the day, it's what the coaches want. Like, if the coaches think that this player fits their scheme better, they would prefer him over that, and that's why we could be seeing a little bit more disjointed work within the Cowboys draft so far.
It's tough to say because I don't know. I mean, obviously, you wanted to listen to the input of Dan Quinn, and they have been listening. If you look at the characteristics and the type of players that we have been drafting. But at the same time, you hear the things like, we pick them, you coach them. So, I know Will McClay and the Cowboys scouting department, they have an idea about the type of players that they like. And I don't think that's changed a whole lot, throughout the years and throughout the different coaching staffs. But yeah, you're going to see some different influences. I certainly don't think we get in a situation, and it's kind of funny the way this draft has gone is people kind of talk about, well, this is like the hot seat year for McCarthy or whatever. This is his year, make or break, Mike. And then we got one tight end. That's what he's got, to basically, help him show that he's a better offensive coordinator than Kellen Moore. and it's been everything else has been at defense. So I don't know. I feel like the Cowboys are still just going about things the way they do. They evaluate these players. They look for certain types of players, and they trust in it. And when it's a player that we have graded high, then we celebrate. When it's not, when it's someone around later, we're scratching our heads. Like we've done quite a bit these last few days. But at the same time, Cowboys, they're good at this. So. I don't know. I'm glad McCarthy is a hands-off guy because you've heard me say over what I think about Will McClay and the Cowboys' ability to build a roster. I think they're really good at it. So I'm just interested to see how all this takes shape because there's a lot of players that we like, but it's like how much do we like them? And I think by the time training camp rolls around, similar to like I did with Tyler Smith. And it took me a while to warm up. It did, but when you start to see what he does on the field, it changes in a heartbeat. So I'm excited.
And there's a lot of discussion in the comments right now with regards to offensive linemen. The Cowboys took a defensive player again, not addressing offensive line. Johnny Boy says Green Bay also had established quarterback play and offensive line play to rely on. Kind of talking about how. Let me see here. Watsamata says apparently Chuma Adoga is sculpted out of pure gold by the gods of Mount Olympus themselves. That's pretty funny. I like that. But again, we don't know where the Cowboys feel they trust where their offensive line is at. Zach Wolchuk of 105.3 The Fan and the Dallas Cowboys Draft Show, he said that there are guards still available in free agency. If the Cowboys don't address the offensive line in the draft. He said that they've always been a big fan of Dalton Reisner. I believe he was a Denver Bronco last year. I think he's still floating around there. So there are guys where, like a similar to Zeke's situation, where it's a vet that might not be signed before the draft. They might want to address this afterwards. It's kind of like just hold tight. If we don't take somebody at this position, we'll call you. And similar to undrafted free agency, like the pro personnel guys are going to have to hop on the phone and say, well, who's available right now that we can just hop on and take care of? We are still here. Don't worry, guys. We are still here. I believe RJ is trying to get back in here. But we were discussing there we go. I think we're back with RJ. So we were just talking about how the offensive line, Zach Wolchuk posed the thought of that there are still guards still available in free agency if they don't address the offensive line. And I think that's okay. There are vets that might be available. The Cowboys have circled as sort of these priority free agents after the draft. And then if they do go that route and it's a name that could be a plug and play guy at left guard, then we feel probably a little bit better about that.
I don't know how you guys feel, but I just saw a tweet from friend of BTB, former BTB Orlando McCool. To your point, kind of, Brandon, what if the Cowboys just bring Jason Peters back? Like what, you know what I'm saying? Like we're sitting here like, what's going to happen? Like, what if they just, and I'm not saying like, oh, boom, like, they found the map on the back of the Declaration of Independence, type thing. But like, that does solve some of these issues, the conundrum, the question mark that we have. But I mean, certainly if they want to sign a guard in free agency, I'm not opposed to that. I don't know how much I buy the Terrence Steele, Josh Ball stuff, but I do think they clearly have a plan. The Jason Peters thing makes a modicum of sense to me. Who's your favorite guard option in free agency? I know people are throwing out Lyle Collins as a joke, but I mean, maybe it's not a joke.
Brandon said it. It's Reisner. I think Reisner would make a lot of sense. And, I think our guard is Tyler Smith. I think that if we're into the 5th round here, we haven't addressed the offensive line. I think it's going to be Tyron Smith, Tyler Smith, and then what we know on the right side. I think that's what the Cowboys feel. I think they understand. I think that guard proven, maybe this is, revisionist history at this point, but I think it's proven at this point that the Cowboys didn't, or maybe they just go wiped out, but I think that they didn't value it as much as we had, right? I mean, we're in the 5th round here. They haven't even come close to sniffing or addressing it at all. So maybe they feel strongly about the position flex and the guys they have on the team right now, barring injury, right? If it's healthy, I think they have a solid line there, but it's all about health.
Israel Abdekanda is gone to the New York Jets. So sorry, Danny.
Yeah, well, only one left for me. Otherwise, it's basically UDF guys.
Me and Brandon talked about it. Like, there actually are some names that we thought were pretty intriguing. We talked about Kenny McIntosh, we talked about Chase Brown, we talked about different things. I want to see if I can pull up the list while I have it here.
Clayton Tune went while I was
Yes.
gone.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I didn't. Nobody told me. Nobody told me this.
Yeah, it just happened. So Max Duggan is, I believe, the last quarterback the Cowboys have shown interest in that's available. So
yeah, Deuce Vaughn, Chase Brown, Dwayne McBride, like Eric Gray. There are some guys I know that you're nothing crazy, but like I don't think running back is something that maybe I was thinking, because we had talked about maybe running back, wide receiver with the last pick. Maybe they saw that there were 8 or 9 guys that they'd feel comfortable bringing in, and they just said, you know what, somebody will be there. We'll take one of them.
So I'm gonna ask a question to you both. Brandon is off. I think he went to make an entire brisket, is what he said. But so we'll see about that. But I'm gonna ask you two and the chat, and our super secret producer that is such a mysterious figure around here to the audience. Who is more likely? So this is not like what you want. I want you to play the game, play the Cowboys. Who is more likely to return to the team? Jason Peters or Zeke Elliott? Based on what we're seeing here through the draft. Let's take a look at the Cowboys draft class right now, and we'll also put notable additions this offseason. Who is more likely to return? Tony, Catalina.
I personally think Jason Peters. I think the Zeke Elliott stuff is a lot more fan talk than actual reality. I mean, he takes a pay cut. He leaves here. He kind of leaves with his tail between his leg. Jason Peters, there was none of that, right? He's 40 years old. He's on the very last leg of his career. If he wants to come in and be depth like he was and be a good support system for the team and offensive line, just help the younger guys, I could see Jason Peters being in that role. I think Ezekiel Elliott, there may be a little bit more hurt feelings involved there than Jason Peters would.
Danny.
I think if the Cowboys wanted any part of Zeke, then they would have worked at some type of restructure, and they didn't. So I honestly, not only do I feel, and then you know how I feel about Elliott. I love it. I love Zeke, but I feel like his playing days are really numbered. I mean, I feel like he'll sign somewhere probably mid-season, or early part of the season, play a little bit, and that will be the end of it. And I just feel like it's just the physics of the running back position. You get the wear and tear, and then you don't have the juice. I mean, I would really like to have one of these remaining running backs that's out there on the team rather than giving the ball to Elliott. Now, don't get me wrong. If it's a short yardage situation, I'd love to have him, but I'm not going to have a person on the roster for a very exclusive role just like that. So to me, no, it would be Peters. I agree with Tony.
Man, that was a loud bit of wind. It's pretty windy outside my house right now, so that was I got scared. So you both agree, Jason Peters. Danny, you mentioned the word numbers. I do think it would be very Cowboys to bring Zeke Elliott back and then have him wear number 15, which he's now eligible to do, and then kind of get a whole run on Zeke Elliott 15 jerseys, because he even said that, right? That was his tweet. I think that was his first tweet after the Cowboys released him, was that he wanted his number 15 back. I do think it's interesting if you think back to, and Brandon Gouton has mentioned this a lot on the NFC's mixtape show that we do. There was the report when Zeke was connected to, we talked about Amenaconda going to the Jets. That was one of the teams on Zeke's shortlist, right? The Bengals and the Eagles, who traded for DeAndre Swift. So if you buy that report, the Jets already kind of had a full house at running back anyway, but the Eagles now have DeAndre Swift. It's kind of the Bengals are bust for Zeke relative to that list, at least. But yeah, I mean, so the report at that time was that Zeke wanted to have his new team a week and a half from then, and that was 6 weeks ago. So, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but Johnny Boy RN offers, if they don't draft a running back today, then it would be Zeke. Then again, can we improve upon Davis or Rico Dowdle at this point in the draft? Tony, you are president of the Rico Dowdle fan club. If we look at ESPN's best available running backs here, the number one prospect is Eric Gray out of Oklahoma. Zach Evans is still on the board, right? Did I miss Zach Evans going anywhere? So Zach Evans is available. I do think that we would get a similar reaction to when the Cowboys drafted Ryan Switzer if they drafted Deuce Vaughn. Everybody would obsess with his highlights and would love him, and it'd be super fun. But Tony, is Rico Dowdle the answer that's kind of hiding in plain sight, I guess?
I guess he could be, and we multitask here. I get a little look behind the curtain at BTB, but in the Slack group chat, people were talking about, they were talking about Malik Davis this, Malik Davis that. I'm like, don't forget about Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle beat Malik Davis out of training camp, and the reason why Malik Davis got his situation or got his opportunity was because Rico Dowdle got hurt. Now, I'm as the president of the Rico Dowdle fan club, I'm still okay with improving the position. If they think Eric Gray's better, if they think Dwayne McBride's better, Kenny McIntosh, there's guys that can be had there. If they think one of those guys are better, go and do it, because I'm thinking the Cowboys are thinking in the future. I'm thinking about the future at the running back position. Like, could this be Tony Pollard's final year? After this, we may be a whole reset in the running back spot. So if you get a good value pick in the 5th round, he maybe produces whoever that guy is, and he does something good that you can build on. You may have your starting running back for a really cheap salary in 2024.
Danny, is
No.
Rico Dowdle the answer?
No, I think we're done with Rico. I think Cowboys just they love their Ricos, whether it's Gathers or Dowdle. I think Malik Davis is a better running back too. And let's not forget that we also have Ronald Jones on the roster too. And now he was kind of buried in KC, so it was kind of tough for him to get the reps. But he comes in there as RB3. I mean, it's not like the Cowboys don't have anyone who can run the ball. And I do think that Ronald Jones brings that little extra power if you're looking for like a crash and dash with TP and Joe. I feel like you could have something there. I'm certainly not putting a lot of faith in that, and that's why I would love to see the Cowboys get a rookie running back. But I mean, I would be super jacked about a McIntosh right now, and as Tony mentioned, there are still a few players here that I think could come in and be contributors and help carry the 30% that Pollard won't be carrying. So I don't feel like
on the subject of Pollard. On the subject of Pollard, Danny, we had a question from Kevin. Who actually believes Pollard doesn't miss games this year? Do any of us think that it's like Tyron, right? Like, we're all like, yeah, he's missing games. Like, we're all raising our hand. Is anybody confident that Tony Pollard is missing time this year? Because I'm not. Tony Pollard did not have an injury history prior to the fibula situation.
The only thing working against Tony Pollard is he plays running back, and that is a physical position. And so any running back could miss 2 to 3 games. That's why people draft handcuffs in fantasy and stuff, because that's just the way it is. So, but I'm not certainly worried about we better get someone because Pollard's likely to miss time. I don't believe that at all. But I think it's important to have someone to not get him overextended. I do not think it would be wise for the Cowboys coaches to try to work him into a bell cow running back if we don't have someone else. But I don't feel like the Cowboys, they've never shown us that they're really going to do something like that. So it's not something I'm worried about.
Kevin notes that he has missed time, but the Cowboys have been casual with Tony Pollard and his injuries, right? Like, they haven't, been in a situation where they've, where he's just completely, like, again, they've been somewhat cavalier in that. I would add to your point, Danny, what's working against him is that he not only, I mean, maybe these are the same things, but he plays running back, and now he's the unquestioned starter. Like his touches are going to go through the roof relative to what we've seen over the course of his career. I guess.
Yeah, it's important to know that Pollard runs out of gas, and it's just, I mean, we've seen the clips. He's like, I'm done. Of course, he's just had 3 touchdowns and ran for 180 or something. But he does. He's not a kind of person like Elliott, earlier in his career where you could just give him the ball. He's going to wear you down the 4th quarter. No, he will wear down. He is not a workhorse back. So you do need to have a 2 running back system for Pollard to do what Pollard does. But I feel like the Cowboys can do that. I don't think it's going to take some, amazing signing or early draft resource to accomplish that. And like I say, they might even be in better position than we realize with our Ronald Jones in there. And I do like Malik Davis. I think he's, what we saw, if the Cowboys were to have to roll out Malik and Tony as their 1-2 punch, I don't think that would be terrible. I would like to have some depth, but I don't think that would be terrible. So I feel like the Cowboys are in better shape at running back, as than maybe some people think.
To Danny's point, I would be in favor of that. If Malik Davis is the number 2, that means he beat Rico Dowdle, he beat Ronald Jones, he possibly beat out a rookie. Like I said, he didn't beat Rico Dowdle out last year. So that means Malik Davis is, developed. He didn't beat him out last year. So I would like to see that year 2 leap. But what I say, and it's not anything about you two, I see more so in the comments and through Cowboys Nation, like everyone was out against, most people are out against Bijan Robinson in the first round. Nobody wanted to pay Ezekiel Elliott $90 million. Nobody wanted to bring Ezekiel Elliott back because of his number. And then, last Super Bowl, we seen Isaiah Pacheco was a 7th round pick come out there and have a massive impact on the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'm not going to sit here and press for running back when everybody in the world is reminding us that this is like a depreciating asset and you can find running backs anywhere and they can be found in the rough and undrafted or whatever the case may be. The Cowboys, we trust this scouting department. We trust Will McClay. Whether it's a 5th, 6th, 7th rounder, undrafted guy, I have the faith that they're going to bring somebody in to compete. Now, if they sit and they stand pat and it's a combination of Tony Pollard, Ronald Jones, Malik Davis, Rico Dowdle, like they'll find out the best recipe. And like RJ said earlier, it may be addition by subtraction. Without Ezekiel Elliott commanding so many carries and not being the elusive back that probably this NFL brand of football commands now, you may be better for it. So there's a chance that the running game could overall just look better based on that fact.
I wrote about this with regards to DeMarvion Overshown. Was talking about him. Does anybody know how many snaps Anthony Barr played for the Cowboys last year? Because it was kind of startling.
A lot.
He missed some time, but if I remember correctly, he had a pretty good percentage of reps.
609. The only non-Micah Parsons linebacker, because Micah's obviously different, who played more than him was Leighton Vander Esch. And so my argument or point in the article was that you've got to replace that, right? Like we sat here and we actually were like, well, they had to replace Luke Gifford. That's why they drafted DeMarvion Overshown. They had to replace Anthony Barr, and we're fine with them replacing Anthony Barr. Like that's a good decision, but you have to devote those things somewhere. And so like to the Zeke point, you have those carries. We can put a lot on Tony Pollard's plate, but like they have to go somewhere. Like, are we really confident? No offense to Malik Davis or Rico Dowdle, that that's what you want to do. So like if we want to, kind of shift them and now Tony Pollard inherits Zeke's role. And this is what we saw last year, right? Like, and I'm not advocating for like the running back. Oh my gosh, like, well, they're so lost. They haven't added a running back. Everything's terrible. But the problem was last year was, okay, CD is going to take over for Amari. That's absolutely going to happen. He's going to become wide receiver 1. Done. Boom. That did happen. You did not replace what CD was to Amari, right? Like that's the compliment is what we're now focused on fixing here when it comes to the running back position. And I honestly think that, I probably felt more confident in Michael Gallup fulfilling that role last year, even coming off of the injury, than I do Malik Davis fulfilling the role that Tony Pollard has had all this time.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I don't really think we're actually replacing filling Tony Pollard's role. I think Pollard's role is what his role is. I think we got to replace Zeke's role, and I actually feel pretty confident that Malik can do that. Okay, we're going to lose a little bit in pass protection because Zeke is undervalued in certain aspects of the game in like short yardage situations and just overall passion and just the will to get that extra inch to get the first down. So we're not going to have that, but I do think that you can supplement those carries by another player. And then again, not just Malik, but you have Ronald Jones on your. I don't know. He's just like a year removed from having a pretty good season. So it's not like Ronald Jones is chopped liver. So I think the Cowboys will be fine. I don't think they're in any type of situation where they're forced to really address it. Obviously, they haven't. They brought in a lot of running backs. We thought for sure 4th round they're taking one, maybe even as early as 3rd. Didn't happen because there are better players on the board they liked. And now we're looking at a situation where we don't even know if they're going to come away with this draft with one.
Let's see here. The Bears just took Noah Sewell. I said this the other night. If you looked at a mock draft the Saturday of the draft last year, like a way too early 2023, there were a lot of people mocking Noah Sewell to the Cowboys in the 1st round. Obviously, that did not happen. Okay, so I just saw the number here. In case anybody's unaware, the Eagles have acquired 6 former Georgia Bulldogs over the last 2 drafts. That's the number. Who are the 6? Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Keely Ringo, and DeAndre Swift.
Yes.
Oh, DeAndre Swift. I was trying to figure out where that last one is.
Crazy.
Wow.
Jeez, I don't even like to think about the DeAndre Swift one.
Do we feel like, because I've seen this take kind of floating around. First of all, I think this is going to be offense, right? Like I think we feel pretty
I wouldn't
confident.
be so sure.
Well, what's it going to be?
Well, let's take a look at their group now. Whoops, let's get this up on the screen. There we go. This has to be.
Is it going to be their backup quarterback?
I think at this point, like, I'd almost be mad if they took a guard at this point. And let's get Brandon back up on the screen. You know what I mean? And Brandon, okay, so we're having this conversation, Brandon. We all think that this is about to be offense. So what? And Danny said, "What is it going to be?"
Yeah, I don't think I necessarily agree to that.
Okay. Well, for the moment, let's hypothetically agree that this is about to be offense.
Okay.
So my point is, I would be upset if they took a guard. You've waited too long. Like we don't need to force the issue with a guard. Go get the toy. You know what I mean? We've been waiting on, and maybe we're undervaluing Luke Schoonmaker as a toy, but I mean, I don't know. Where's your head at, Brandon? Now that I said what you told me was that you went and smoked an entire brisket in the time that you were gone. So A, how was it? And B, what do you see coming up here in the 5th round?
Yeah, I actually perfected the method to do a quick smoking of a brisket, so it was awesome. I do think running back would be the best case scenario, because I do think that if you can upgrade the position with the guys that are available right now, Tony and I were talking about where there's now it's probably like 5 or 6 names I saw. Bandaconda went, that could upgrade the position over somebody like Malik Davis or Ronald Jones or Rico Dowdle. Like we love all those guys. But if you can upgrade the position and then have somebody long-term and be sort of your future, and then you can draft somebody next year, like that's a good problem to have. I'm trying to see wide receiver-wise. A.T. Perry is still around. Parker Washington, Trey Palmer, the wide receiver from Nebraska. Like the only one that would really bum me out is Keyshawn Boutte, like out of LSU. Like he's could have been a number or first-round prospect at wide receiver, but off-the-field concerns have just been a really big problem for him and lack of effort. So that's why he's still kind of hanging around, and personality issues. So that would be the one where it's kind of like, ooh, do we really want to take that right now? But if they address wide receiver, running back, I'm okay with that.
Tony, Rick Orsolini let us know in the comments that the Packers just took Sean Clifford. So another quarterback off the board. I think this is 10 on the class as a whole. But what if this was the quarterback, Tony? What if they did go offense? What if they satisfy? I mean, we had this conversation, in the last round, but what if they took a quarterback right here?
I don't think it's the right play, so I think they'll probably do it, so, based on that. But, yeah, there's a lot of prospects that I like, and I just heard Brandon mention a few of them, and you go through the list and you're like, okay, Parker Washington, A.T. Perry, there's guys here, there's cornerbacks to be had, running backs to be had, and yeah, this is probably when they'll take the backup quarterback. So I wouldn't love it. I mean, I'm playing around being goofy there, but I wouldn't love it right now. I mean, I don't know. When's that help your team? At what point does that help you? Like you got Cooper Rush under contract. When does you just, is that another Ben DiNucci for Mike McCarthy to mold and have fun with? Or I don't know.
So if we consider offensive additions this offseason, Danny, because I know you're saying you're not necessarily certain they're going offensive side of the ball. You can call the Zeke thing an addition by subtraction, whatever. They've traded for Brandon Cooks, Chuma Edoga, now Luke Schoonmaker. Am I missing any other offense? Oh, Ronald Jones. Am I missing anything else? Anybody?
You mentioned Edoga, right?
Right. Yeah. So
yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying that this is dumb or that I disagree with it, but you kind of need to do something. And maybe you want to, in your most optimistic sense, say Michael Gallup another year post injury, right? You're getting a better version of him. Maybe they believe in Jalen Tolbert. That's why they're not drafting a receiver, whatever.
Yeah. I'm just
you've lost Dalton Schultz, who, for all the things we've said, was an important part of the offense.
Right, but I think you just did a fantastic job replacing Dalton Schultz because with their pick. I just don't feel like there's any great urgency. I mean, we all would love a powerful left guard, but we're not getting one right now anyway. So, and you talk about Tyler Smith. He's our left guard. Maybe they just have a lot of faith. We talked about maybe Josh Ball there, but maybe they have faith in let's go. Like, you know what? If when Tyron gets hurt, then we just throw out let's go, and we'll be okay. So I just feel like if you look at each position, there's not really like any big worry. And we just went through it with running back, which may have been one of the bigger worries outside of left guard. And to me, I just rationalized myself to not even worrying about that. But I feel like they're fine at wide receiver. I feel like that they're fine. They're fine at tight end. Obviously, we've got a new second round pick. I just feel like they have some options on offensive line. And to me also, and this is probably one of the biggest reasons, is I just think so much of it relies on how well Dak Prescott plays. So I feel like they're going to get better there because Dak's not going to be throwing a bunch of picks, this next season. So I feel like it's okay. If I would like them, like if they're interested in Corey Trice right now, which like Brugler has, a couple spots ahead of Luke Schoonmaker. So I would be happy with that. I think that would be a nice development corner that could help replace when Gilmore's gone. So I don't think it necessarily has to be offense here. I want them to take a really good player, take a talent they can develop that's going to be a contributor. If it's not this season, then next season. Don't reach for anything. So to me, I feel like they can go anywhere. I don't think they're boxed in anywhere.
To your point, Danny, ESPN's list of best available players. Top 5 are all defense. I'm sorry, top 4. The fifth is the first offensive player, and it is A.T. Perry, who Tony, you advocated for a little while ago. So if they go receiver, they go running back, they go corner, presuming it is Corey Trice, I think we can live with that. Can we not, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, if they look at some of these guys and these names that Antonio Johnson from Texas A&M is intriguing. Corey Trice, I'm interested in, I don't know his name, Henry Tua from Alabama. Like he's sitting there for an awfully long time. Like I don't understand that too well, but I mean that's tremendous value at this point. I would feel,
I would feel better about him coming in as as a reserve to play right away versus Overshawn, to be quite honest. But I mean, I think that's a great value.
And we've seen them double up on positions. So if this may be where they finally get some value, because there are some guys here that, or at least some people that I'm intrigued by, and I know some in Cowboys Nation like some of these guys available.
Brandon.
Yeah, I'm now that you mentioned the names that are up at the top, A.T. Perry to me, and I don't know, Tony, if you have like a comp to him. I saw a lot of like Bryce Butler in his game, like a taller kind of like lanky guy, can get down the field. Very similar, but like he's an intriguing name if they want to go that route. But yeah, 2-0, if he's still there, I mean, not only from special teams value, but just being a better linebacker. We know Overshown is, like we mentioned, he doesn't really have a home right now on the defense. So he has a very similar build to someone like a Jaron Kearse, where if they want to use him as this sort of hybrid safety linebacker, you still need a pure linebacker to be on the team. So I think he would be a great value, especially here. And then Corey Trice. So as much as there's been as a defensive heavy draft, if you add one more player here, I think it's still pretty good value given who's on the board.
It's still a little while. We got a.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. That's what happens when you give up the not the fifth comp or the comp 5th round pick, and you give up your actual 5th round.
Did any of you guys have like I really hope they go this position with this next pick. I mean, is there any?
It was kicker, but then they all left.
How about offensive side of the ball? I'd be cool with any of the any offensive side of the ball guy.
Pick one, Tony. I mean, which one do you want? What do you feel like they really need to come through with? I mean,
wow, you got called out,
Tony. It's too late to say that any guard right now would be like a monumental switch. So like I'd be cool with like a wide receiver or a running back right now. Somebody to get another playmaker in here.
My only concern is I like A.T. Perry, but I feel like you're gonna have. I don't know if you're really much of an upgrade there. I feel like you're still got your main 3, and that's not changing. And you're just saying here's a guy that can challenge Jalen Tolbert for the 4th spot, and I feel like that's really what you're getting there.
Yeah, they might need it though. I mean, if
Yeah, they
Jalen,
might. Yeah.
important year for Jalen Tolbert. We mentioned Antonio Callaway earlier. I think you weren't here for that, but there's value in finding somebody to compete with Malik and Rico, and finding value with somebody to compete with, Simi Fehoko, Antonio Callaway, Jalen Tolbert. So, and that's
You
what the end
guys-
of the draft is about anyway.
You guys are forgetting about somebody who started a game for the Cowboys at wide receiver last year.
Dennis
Oh
Houston.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
Dak's
So
favorite.
I mean,
we just got an abundance of talent at wide receiver. So
There might be a 30
okay.
for 30 on Dennis Houston in a few years.
That was,
the
I mean, again, look, I love the time of year that is just so that like we're in, and I love training camp, and I love the pet cats and all the positive vibes, but like, and I have nothing against Dennis Houston, but it really is amazing that because Dak Prescott thought he was cool, like thousands of Cowboys fans are like, this guy's going to be great. Like literally that's all it was, which speaks to a lot. Okay. So let's take a look at the draft class, because Dallas has just entered the ticker for NFL Network. So we're 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 picks away. And we have 3 picks left to play with as of now. So what are the goals? We're going to outline 3 goals, 3 picks. So 3 goals. I would like each of you to come up with a goal. So they obviously have to be somewhat different from one another. Brandon, what is your goal for the Cowboys to accomplish over the course of the next 3 picks?
So just name 3 positions.
No. Like a goal, and like the goal doesn't have to be a position. The goal can be like quarterback depth, or a running back option, or wide receiver depth. Like it's a goal.
But he only gets to pick one goal first, right? You don't
right. You only get to pick one goal.
Yeah.
Like we're basically we're creating a vision board, and so we need you to come up with a goal to put on it.
I was gonna say for giggles, I was gonna say draft Oluwatimi, the center from Michigan, but he was just taken by the Seahawks. So I thought that would have been pretty funny. But I do like Luke Whippler, the center out of Ohio State. I know he's 6'3", 303 pounds. Maybe he could be your sort of backup guard, just a depth piece that you just take a flyer on. So to me, take a flyer on one of these offensive linemen and see where they land.
So again, you want some offensive line depth. If we have to cast a wide net, offensive line depth. Okay. Yeah. Tony Catalina.
Give me an athlete on the outside, whether they be cornerback or wide receiver. I want to see some speed, some athleticism. Like I said, I mean, the way this draft is going, it could be defense again, but I'd be cool with either side of the ball.
Okay, so we've got speed on the outside. I like how you've kind of
that was clever.
Cheated a little bit, and it included both sides here. So you want a really fast player who at some point touches the football with their hands, if you want to get really, really, really wide. But you want, again, speed on the outside. All right, let's go there. Danny Phantom, we've got so far offensive line depth, speed on the outside. Where are you going and why?
Yeah, first off, I think those are really good goals, so I like those. So of the remaining goals, I think I would like to add some running back depth. I would like to find one of these fresh-legged rookies that we can throw in there with our group, and I still feel like there's a few players that are available. So I feel like this would be a great value to get a round 5 running back that we can package with the rest of our guys.
Can I bring up one name to go with Tony's point? Because I do see he's still available. Andre Yoshvas. He's the wide receiver from Princeton. Go Princeton Tigers. Local kid for me, but he has the track speed to be a deep ball threat. Still needs to develop, I think, a little bit more coming from the Ivy League, but he's a guy that if you want to take a flyer on somebody at wide receiver where they have the speed and could play a viable role on special teams being a gunner, that would fit perfectly, I think, in my opinion.
Okay, so I like these. We've got offensive line depth. Although you play the game, Brandy. If you get too specific and you don't hit, then you lose points. So we got offensive line depth. Tony understands how to cheat and went speed on the outside. Danny went really specific and went running back depth. I will add. You guys kind of went all positionally. I will add. Get a great value. That's my goal. Get a great value at this point. Like
there you go.
Be a smart, drafting team.
Draft a good player, RJ Wynn.
Bold strategy.
I went last so that you guys could all have your pick of the goals. All right. So get a great value. If we want it to be smaller font on the vision board, then I'm fine with that. But that's my goal and I'm sticking to it. So whose goal do you like the best that wasn't yours, Tony?
It is mine. Yeah, because they haven't addressed it. You know, I've been hammering. I would love Joey Porter in the first. Okay, cool. He didn't go there. I'd love a wide receiver in the second or third. Cool. They didn't go there. So just give me some athleticism, some speed, some big playability. Whether it's on the offensive side or the defense side of the ball, I'm unpicky about that.
Okay, Danny,
Yeah.
is
I'm
your
gonna
favorite goal your own?
It's sort of yours and sort of mine, because I feel like they could accomplish great value by getting a running back in round 5. And I feel like I like both of their goals. But I just feel like the type of player that we might be getting at those positions is somebody who's really going to be challenged for a roster spot. I feel like we can get a running back that we're going to keep if we pull the trigger at this point.
Tony.
Sidebar, and this is unrelated, but speaking of running back, Tony Pollard is a star now. I've seen that commercial he's in on the NFL Network like 20 times in the last 3 days. So Tony Pollard is officially the number 1 running back for the Cowboys, because I'm going to get sick of that commercial.
That's when life is good for you. Okay, so we have our goals. All right, we did it. Offensive line depth. That's you, Brandon. We've got speed on the outside from Tony Catalina. Running back depth. Get a great value. We didn't go smaller font because we were being kind to me. So we'll see if the Cowboys are able to kind of cross any of these off as they move along. As we wait for the Cowboys pick to come up, the fantastic team at DallasCowboys.com just tweeted out. I haven't seen this yet, but we have it ready for you to play. I think it's a video of Mozzie Smith and like just kind of a compilation of his first day at the Star in Frisco on Friday. So here is the video from DallasCowboys.com.
Looking good, dude. Found an extra deal. For real? Yeah, with
Yeah, I'll put me on the video.
Come on, man. Put you on the video.
I'll put me on the video. That's good.
Say you want to be here, man. Yeah, I was like, yo. Oh, yeah, hey, yeah, hey. How you doing, brother?
Very cool. As we look at the Mozzie Smith pick a little bit in retrospect, I mean this was a home run, and I mean everybody that actually it was the 3 of you. I was here with the 3 of you stooges, and you guys were like, I don't know, I mean, Nolan Smith was there, and Joey Porter Jr. was there. No, and now you guys are ready to buy your own 58 jerseys. Tony Catalina, what do you have to say for yourself?
I love the kid. I mean, he's easy to root for, you know. I said it on TikTok, I said it here, I said it everywhere. Like my qualms about this was never about him, the player. It was about what was around him and what they could have done. Now that he's here, and we're like 48 hours into here, and him and his mother, you know, that's an awesome video, and it came in like he's gonna be a powerful freak inside the middle, and he's gonna help us a lot. And I'm hoping he's an absolute Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer here.
Danny, now that you've had not quite 48 hours, but a little bit of time, you've had several meals. Hopefully you've brushed your teeth a couple of times since, things like that. Have you come around? Do you feel like this is a standard Dallas Cowboys first round selection?
Yeah, and I even told you on the first day that my next thing was to come around, because that's what you're going to do. You're going to focus on the positive. I've already wrote my Why I Love Mozzie Smith piece that they went out yesterday. That's not to say that I still have some issues with the pick and some of the reasons why I don't think it was warranted, but absolutely. I mean, there's a great player, powerful player. I love the fact that we get guys that are just super. I mean, you can't teach strength, and the Cowboys, they go after these players that they're going to stand the test of time, because strong players win in the trenches. So there's so much to like about them. And also the Cowboys just have such an abundance of pass rushers to where it's not like, you relying on him to play an excessive amount of snaps, because he does wear down. He's quick out of the gate, but not much for stamina. But you know what? So what? Put him down on early downs, have him stop the run, cycle him with the other great defensive linemen we have. So absolutely, I'm excited about Mozzie Smith. It's definitely a different feel than I had a couple days ago.
Brandon, I really like this from Johnny Boy. Says Mozzie was a solo home run, while other options at the time could have been the dinger with runners on the bag. So still ultimately scoring, just kind of a matter of how it happened. You were a little bit down in the dumps too. I mean, with these guys, they're acting like they weren't though. You were honest about it. You atoned on Friday at the very least.
Well, you know what? I have to say, for my two other compadres there, I think that they were very honest with their opinion. I was following Danny along his journey on Twitter, and same with Tony afterwards, of sort of doing the deep dive and really coming around to terms with the picks. So I think they've done their due diligence on that. But I do think, for me, when I look at the Super Bowl winners and Super Bowl teams of the previous few seasons, the LA Rams, they have Aaron Donald. The Kansas City Chiefs have Chris Jones. The Eagles have Javon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox in their defensive tackle position. And then you also have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Vita Vea. Like, it seems like a lot of these teams, what they have in common is elite play from the defensive tackle positions. And the Cowboys have starved for that for years, decades, like you talked about on Thursday. So I see the vision now. I see it and I trust it. And not only is he a great dude, like Tony mentioned, the athletic prowess that the guy brings, I think, is just something that any defensive coordinator would love to have. The Kansas City Chiefs were trying to trade up supposedly to go and get him. So that always makes me feel better that he's a player that other teams coveted as well. But the Cowboys said that this is somebody that they had all along circled on their board. So to me, if that's the process, that's how it went down. They got the guy that they wanted, and I can't knock him for it.
That's well said. Look at you guys singing a different tune.
I love that you watch that video, RJ, and you see his big, that sitting there. I mean, as big as that was, it still didn't fit his whole body.
Yeah,
so that was quite an impressive specimen of a person he is.
It really is amazing how physically large he is, like how physical of a human being he is. Brandon, you mentioned Vita Vea. I don't know that we touched on it. Vita Vea is Junior Fajoko's cousin. Just in case anybody is unaware of that. As far as just NFL ties are concerned. Kevin has said that you guys are eating crow on Mozzie, like Howman has eaten crow on Leighton Vander Esch. So you had a comment, Tony?
Yeah, like my point remains. Like it's nothing I said. I don't
There's
feel
no crow. You're not eating crow.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, there's no crow in there. I mean, everything we're saying about Mozzie Smith is true. He's a hulking man who can make a difference in the inside at a position the Cowboys haven't valued in years. Decades maybe. So yes, that you feel good about the player. Now that it's here, we had some time to digest it. If you want to call that crow, then that's your choice. But I'm saying it's like I ate a fillet, and I'm.
He hasn't played it down yet. We don't even know. I mean,
I'm positive in the sense that because that's kind of like who I am, is my demeanor. Like, okay, he's in here. I don't care who we bypass at this point. Like the Cowboys have a plan for him. I hope they execute it, and he's a great addition here.
So we played this game a little bit on Friday night. This is a question for Danny and Tony, because I saw a comment that said the Cowboys should have taken Michael Mayer, right? That was somebody who everybody loved. If we play the literal game, which isn't fair and is a little bit void of context, but say the Cowboys had gone Michael Mayer, and so say that they had to come away from the first rounds with a tight end and a defensive tackle. I believe the next available tackle for them when they were on the clock at 58 was Zach Pickens, I think. So I mean, and there's Byron Young went to the Raiders early in the third round. So call it Byron Young if you want. The Alabama Byron Young. To your point last night, Brandon, like what combination would you rather have?
I like
or Brandon, you go first.
I was gonna say I like what the Cowboys got, because to me, Schoonmaker I think is a better athlete than Michael Mayer. And to me, I mean, maybe it is scouting the jersey, but when I was watching him last night in highlights and all these things, having him be wearing the 86 number reminded me of Dalton Schultz and how he kind of maneuvers and how he runs routes, but just with longer legs. Like if you just added a few more inches on a Dalton Schultz, to me, they're the exact same player. And maybe Schoonmaker can actually get a little bit more separation. We saw he ranked in the top of the percentile with regards to single coverage separation and all these other things. So it's like, I prefer that. And I do like Michael Mayer a lot. He's been compared to baby Gronk. But to me, the pick that you got in Mozzie Smith is better than what you've gotten with like a Byron Young or Pickens.
Tony.
I mean, I'm going to stand pat for how I feel. I mean,
wow, this man rejects your crow, people.
Like the comment that like I'm off on, it's not factually true. Like I said, to be clear, and the first time, that like I appreciate the player, I understand the value, I understand what he's doing. I just know what was on the board, what I would have liked. Nolan Smith, Joey Porter Jr. I don't care where they ended up,
No,
because the
but
Cowboys don't
if
care
you had
either.
to do these two positions, if you had to do it this way, this was the best way, I think, is what
Well,
we're identifying.
if they're
It's
gonna
a
sit
simple
here
point, but that's the point.
Yeah, if the point is that the fall off from Mozzie Smith to the next guy is so severe that you wouldn't switch the order of it, then I can buy that, and I'm okay with that.
Danny.
Yeah, I agree with. I mean, in this scenario, I would definitely like the way it played out. Part of that too is I'm just not a big Michael Mayer fan. I mean, I have him higher than Scooney, but I just like Scooney a lot, and to what Brandon said too. I mean, he's very Schultz. Like, he reminds you, of course, like the number thing does help a little bit, but he is lengthier, and he's got more of an athletic upside than Dalton Schultz has too. So to me, I feel like we can kind of get the best of both worlds. We still, all these tight ends are wild card tight ends. There's no one that's like, okay, he's the star and he's, I don't know. All these guys, we don't know. I mean, even Schultz himself was a fourth rounder. And but I'm not giving up Mozzie right now to take a chance on with the remaining defensive tackles, because especially when the Cowboys struggle so much, having a nose tackle that can really beat you with his power. I mean, we're always getting pushed. It doesn't matter how much we love this guy versus that guy. We're just getting pushed around. And he does, and he, as he said in his press conference, when he puts his hands on somebody, the guy goes backwards. And I mean, I want that player on our team.
So Mike Welch has asked in the chat, who are we thinking we are about to get? So before we kind of roll through some names, I saw a tweet about this. It's just a different thing, but just to bring this subject up, there has been a lot of and I know how Chris Halling feels about this. Chris will join us beginning in the 6th round, but there were a lot of discussions that it would take a 5th round pick to trade for DeAndre Hopkins. So I recognize how, I mean, like, and this is purely hypothetical, but like, would you rather, like, it's easy to like say, I'd rather hold on to the pick. So I'd rather do this like in the middle of, March, right? But we're here right now. We're in the middle of the 5th round. The Cowboys are like 8 picks away, 7 picks away, whatever it is. So like right now, best available wide receiver is A.T. Perry. Antoine Green is the next one, according to ESPN's board. And Xavier Hutchinson's after that. Parker Washington. I mean, you get the point. So would you rather draft or trade? Again, we're speaking very hypothetically. Chris Halling has awarded me 100 points, by the way. But now that we're here, would you rather draft or trade this pick for DeAndre Hopkins? Presuming, it's a big presumption, that this can get it done. Tony, you're up.
1,000,000% yes. Wouldn't even hesitate to do it without hesitation. I wouldn't even, like, there's nothing in the 5th round that would have close to the impact that DeAndre Hopkins could have, period.
But you get what I'm saying? Like, that's an easy thing to say when you're not there. You know what I mean? But now we're here. Now you're looking at it. You're live. You're on the battlefield, Danny. I mean, how do you feel?
100% no. This isn't about the 5th round pick. I mean, you're talking about, you want to take on $20 million a year. This is what we're talking about. And I feel like what they got in Brandon Cooks and the price there. No, I don't care about what pick. We can give them to us for free. Just, I don't want to take on that salary for, I mean, so no, I'm not doing that.
They would make the money work for it to happen. So like, if it's not going to just be like, here's
how many balls do you think Dak is throwing? I mean, that's just
A.T. Perry or DeAndre Hopkins. Even if they're both getting 25.
That is not the question. It's not asked between those.
No, I get it. I mean, if there's a way to make the money work, that's always the assumption with my answer, right? It's like, yeah, obviously we're not going to sit a square, square block and a round peg. If the money can work, DeAndre Hopkins for a 5th, you can have 2 of them.
The money you always have to pay.
Well, the assumption is that it would work in his hypothetical scenario. If the money works, then yes.
Let's make the money work. Let's take Tony Pollard off. Let's take Donovan Wilson off. Let's take off. I think you're still missing about $6 million or so. I don't know, but you one more player, and then answer that same question.
Would you package a 5th and Michael Gallup for DeAndre Hopkins?
No,
I don't want.
Okay.
I don't. It's the money that for me, it's the players that you need that money for, and it's the keeping Michael Parsons around, keeping CD Lamb and Trayvon Diggs. So I mean, it's just that's $20 million per is a lot of cash. So I'll just take my pick, and who knows what we could get? We get a Deron Bland with the 5th rounder,
Or you can get a DeAndre Hopkins.
Or you
Brandon,
can get
Brandon, break the tie. Break the tie. This is the moment of tribal council where like we've had the tie. The votes are public. There's lots of tension and stress in the air. So like you now have to publicly vote somebody off the island.
I think you guys are missing a big factor that we still have Ronnie Bell, the Michigan wide receiver, on the board. So no, I do like the idea of DeAndre Hopkins coming to the Cowboys, but unfortunately, it's the money, and it's also I do like the available wide receivers. Some of them where they are younger players. You don't know how long Hopkins' career is going to last. He is over that age 30 mark, so I think about the AJ Green factor, right? Like a wide receiver, very different guys, very, very different guys. But AJ Green goes from Cincinnati. He's a great wide receiver for years. And then he goes to Arizona, and then you don't see him anymore. So I just think that if you can get a younger player, like I said, Yoshivas, you still have Parker Washington, A.T. Perry, who will be here for a guaranteed 4 years if nothing changes and the player isn't cut. To me, I'd much rather have somebody build chemistry with Dak and be like a diamond in the rough Antonio Brown than somebody that we already have, with a DeAndre Hopkins.
So a couple of things. First of all, Illinois running back Chase Brown just went to the Bengals. So we'll see if they do move on from Joe Mixon. Those have been some rumors. Second of all, our friend Watsamata in the comment section. I like this. Watsamata says, hit the like button, everybody. There's 240 people watching, 35 likes. That's a ratio that we're not satisfied with. In all seriousness, please, if you are watching, it would be cool if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel. That is awesome and always something that is appreciated. Thank you very much, Watsamata. So Tony, you are on an island here besides Chris in the comments section, who has said, we are trying to compete with the Eagles, make win now moves. That is a win now move. Would you rather have a young 5th round rookie to try and compete with the Eagles than DeAndre Hopkins? I guess that's sort of your point, but I do understand, Tony, what Danny and Brandon are saying, and that like you're just like, oh yeah, take the card, like put whatever on it, like we're fine, like well, I get to go home with the toy today. Well, Brian, thank you for the super chat. Says Dan is right. Cringe. Sorry, Danny. You're getting a cringe response here. The contract does not work. Tony, you've been outvoted. I have to snuff your torch. The tribe has spoken.
Well, listen, on my way out, I'm kicking and screaming. So, but I will say, like, you look at it with the money, and you got to make it find work. I mean, maybe I'm wrong here, but I thought that he was okay with making concessions financially.
He did.
To try
that's what he says.
Yeah, so,
that's what he says. That's
But then look how, I mean, even I think Danny, you wrote an article about Brandon Cooks turning 18 to $6 million with the snap of a finger. Like there's ways to make it work. If the Eagles made this move, we'd be shut the stream down, shut it down. The Eagles can't be beat. And it's like, so this,
I don't know. If he's going to take a 50% discount, this is a slightly different conversation.
What about a 66% discount like Brandon Cooks?
Let's see, what's OBJ making? What I'm trying to think.
So Brian, thank you for the super chat, has just specified the cringe is because I love D-Hop, not hate Danny. So you're safe here, Danny. By the way,
way to go,
Chris.
Brian.
Chris has said that he gives Tony his hidden immunity idol before the tribal council, so you are safe and okay. And notes that Brandon and Danny have to draw rocks. That is
we know where the alliances lie. Okay, I'll be waiting for you, Chris, later on. So
Tony, I have to agree. It's tempting, and it's too void of context to say, oh, take my 5th round pick and give me DeAndre Hopkins. It's not the exchange that's happening here. It would be awesome, but I don't think it's possible. No, to be clear, Tony, nobody is saying they prefer A.T. Perry to DeAndre Hopkins. That's not the argument.
Right. Sure. I mean, so unless he plays at Arizona, he's gonna be somewhere. So somebody's going to find a way to make it work. And you hope it's, it's not going to be the Eagles, but you hope it's not going to be somebody that could like directly impact you. So if you're talking about a 5th round pick and the possibility of moving money around, and we know that he's spending time with Des Bryant, we don't have to rehash this whole thing with DeAndre Hopkins, but there's an obvious interest there. He's working out in Dallas. If there's a way to make the money work, which is always the caveat, the 5th round pick is a very easy thing for me to stand to give up.
All right, well, let's talk about this 5th round pick. Let's take a look at Kyle Yeomans' tweet, who you shared, Brandon. Thank you very much. Names to highlight on day 3: Darius Rush. This is the tweet from earlier. Sorry, excuse me. Or no, this is from a moment ago. The time confused me. Darius Rush is gone, right? So Eric Gray, Eric Scott, Zach Evans is still hanging out, I think. Am I wrong? Did somebody Zach Evans. So who's the pick?
So,
who does everybody
I
want?
was gonna say the common theme of this whole list is running back. You know, I think that if they want to circle that as a position of just get a guy now that you don't want to fight for an undrafted free agency. Tony said that he has a lot of names that, you know, the Cowboys could always go after. But if you want to get a guy now, the value's still pretty good. Just get him now, and then you don't have to worry about fighting for somebody.
I like Eric Gray here. Like, I think he's a nice compliment to Tony Pollard. I think he can come in and if you want him to take over the reins next year and Tony Pollard isn't in the picture, you can find another finesse or, you know, kind of elusive back in the draft next year and kind of start from scratch. So Eric Gray is that type of potential to me. I like him.
Let's take a look. Or Danny, go ahead.
Yeah, me personally, I like, and it's not on this list, but I like Kenny McIntosh as far as running backs go. I mean, we need to keep him from the Eagles because he's a Georgia player. I know Rabs, he's a big fan of Dwayne McBride, so there's another running back in. But I feel like the Cowboys, I just feel like it's going to be Zach Evans. He seems like the one the player that he's on this list too. So that's kind of if I was gonna vote, I would pick Zach Evans is going to be our next selection.
Well, it is time to vote to continue to borrow lines from Jeff Probst. These are our goals that we have established here on the stream that we want to see the Cowboys accomplish through the next 3 rounds. Offensive line depth, speed on the outside, running back depth. Zach Evans obviously accomplishes running back depth. Who do we think it's going to be? Everybody has to pick a player. Danny, you get to go first.
I'm taking Zach
Evans. The war room is up now, by the way.
Yeah, Zach Evans is going to be my prediction.
Okay, nobody can copy anybody. Brandon, you get to go first or next.
I'll do McIntosh.
Okay. Tony, you're gonna go last because you were by yourself on the DeAndre Hopkins thing. I'll go Dwayne McBride.
To stay on brand, I'll say Darius Rush. He's fallen for some reason, but that's good value. And I said the guy on the outside. So
I think Darius Rush went, Tony.
Did he? I thought I was just looking at the list with him on there. My bad. Then I'm saying Eric Gray. Then lock it in.
Well, that certainly bodes well for your prediction. But
for what it's worth, Rajon White, Nishan's
Don't do
brother
it.
is still available. So, you know, hey, you could get it's like Jalen Smith and Rod Smith all over again. You know,
yeah,
the same type of players.
Good.
I will not be buying that jersey.
Okay, the crowd. Mike Welch says, I like running back Deuce Vaughn. I think we would all enjoy that. I mean, that wouldn't be a problem.
Well, and his dad is a scout, right? Or a lead scout guy for the Cowboys.
Right. Watsamata has said, I would add to your list a name that is hard for Jerry to pronounce. Christopher Lopez says, I'm going Ricks or Trice. Randy says, yes, Zach Evans. Tony, Christopher wants you to pay attention.
Got it.
Opera Doc says McBride or Evans would be a good running mate for Tony. I don't know if it's you, Tony, or Pollard. And Brandon, you are not a nice man, according to Watsamata. So,
that's okay.
Wow.
And to me, you know what? It's just, now that I've heard people from the comments talk, I kind of lean towards a player like Trice because I feel like that would be a good development guy we can get for future corner. And I just feel like because we've all listed a bunch of names of running backs, we could maybe sneak one out in the next round because there's just more options available. And I think corner is a more of a important position. So if I had my druthers, I would be ecstatic if we could pull out a Corey Trice now and then a McIntosh the following round or something like that.
And I agree, but I also look at when we were in round 4, all those offensive guards and linemen that were going at the top of the board. So if the Cowboys kind of stick with that same logic and say, oh, like one of those guys will go, we're getting into round 6 where people want to start again, not fighting for undrafted free agency. They might just start taking all those running backs off the board and the Cowboys might be left with nothing.
It's true, but I feel like you're at a point now where you're just trying to take best players. I don't know if
True.
it's like
True.
you're like you got to have this guy at a certain position now. So I don't know that really comes into play as much. And you know they already threw the curveball with us with Fihoko last time because we're kind of thinking they were gonna do that, but they went a different way. So I don't know. I feel like just get that good football player, you know, get the guy with the traits that they like, and you know, there's a handful of players still that kind of fit that description.
BJ Thompson just went to the Chiefs, and the Texans have traded up to, I guess, whose pick was this before the Cardinals, but the Texans are now on the clock.
So who is the biggest value left? Like who's the best available? Because I feel like whenever there's a trade up, it's like somebody with great value that they can't pass up. That's just
could be A.T. Perry, the wide receiver.
Tua.
Yeah.
Henry.
Alabama guy with what's his name? The new head coach.
DeMeco
Ryans.
Oh, I couldn't remember. Like anyway, but sorry, I got lost in myself. Yeah, the Rams are who traded out with the Texans.
Tua, it's funny just because, like, you know, as one of the commenters said, just to have Jerry pronounce that all the time would be entertaining.
I will say, I don't think this is for a receiver because the Texans drafted Tank Dell last night. They have John Mechie coming back. The Texans are in the middle of a glow up right now. Like the Texans are on. Anybody watch MTV's Made? Like, you know, early 2010s ish. Like that. The Texans are on an episode right now. They're having a good time. Nobody watched Made on MTV. Seriously?
No.
Y'all are joking. There's no way y'all didn't watch Made on MTV.
I can't even picture it, to be honest with you.
It sounds familiar, but
it was Ochoa to the Texans, by the way.
Look at that. We got one right.
Yeah.
One in a row.
The premise of Made was you had a goal and MTV would send you like a coach and they would document you trying to achieve your goal. So it's like, and it was always like a high school person. So it was like, I want to make the football team. I want to be prom queen. I want to whatever. And so they would send you a coach that would like help you do things to achieve that goal. And they would document the journey and you would hopefully accomplish it.
Okay. It's vaguely familiar though. Now that you say that, vaguely.
And why did you bring that up, RJ? What was the?
I forgot.
There's a connection somewhere.
Yeah, there was a connection at somewhere along the way. But
you ever watch Pimp My Ride?
I mean, I forgot how we got here. But you know, whatever. So the Cardinals are on the clock now.
And the War Room Cam is.
Oh, I said it was the
up.
Texans. It was the Texans because they're in the middle of a Made episode. They want to be made into a functional NFL
There you
team.
go. There you go. Yeah. But hey, listen, we got 202 all right, and unfortunately, it's not going to be a Cowboys pick. So I guess I was going to say last night. Remember when we were seeing Jerry Jones on like his personal phone? I guess what it turned out, and we were wondering, oh, like who's he calling? Is it going to be a trade? I guess he was calling his grandson.
Last night, you're saying, before the Overshown pick, in the secret audio, he tells Overshown that he just got off the phone with his grandson Paxton, who plays at the University of Texas. To your point, Brandon. So would that be wild if that was a true deciding factor? Like Jerry calling his grandson saying, "Is this guy good?" And then him saying, "Yeah, he's good." And
our draft evaluation has just basically turned into Jerry's grandson.
Trust me.
Man.
Lock it in.
I will say this is probably the last trade spot. It's just, you know, 6th and 7th round picks don't get moved a ton. You know what I mean? Like in the moment, like if they're going to trade out, this is probably the last one.
Hey, quick question. Would any of you guys go Voorhees right now?
If you think about the future, yeah.
Well, this is what it is. It's future. Yep. I mean, there's nothing that's going to help us right now.
I would wait maybe. Yeah, I would wait maybe one more round. I know that there was a letter sent out by his doctor who did the surgery and the rehab saying everything should be good. There shouldn't be any problems. So at least, you know, with the actual, you know, treatment, it should be okay. And the Cowboys do have a great, you know, staff with regards to strength and conditioning and recovery. So I think it would be a good pick, especially this late, you know. But if you have Whippler still on the board, the center from Ohio State, if he can kick inside, I mean, he's already ready to go, and maybe he competes for a starting role. But Voorhees is still good value.
Do you think that would be overall better? Like just thinking long term, like would you still want him over Voorhees?
Probably only because I think, again, when you start thinking how the Cowboys in the past, let's just say Connor McGovern missed his entire rookie season because of an injury that he sustained in training camp. Like, he was behind the 8 ball, I think, the entire time. So if you're having a guy who can't really do anything, he could be in the meeting rooms, but I think just overall strength and conditioning, I'd prefer to have somebody who can just get in the weight room right now and just build his NFL body a year and instead of a year behind.
So the Cowboys are on the clock. The Cardinals took
They are happy. Oh my
Auburn linebacker Owen Popo. David Moore tweeted out Zach Evans and Chris Rodriguez Jr. are both 30 visits to the Cowboys if they do want to take a running back here. This feels like the running back.
Yeah, he's an intriguing name. I mean, if you watch, I think yards after contact, he is a very, very good runner. Kind of like an under the radar type player, very similar like a Tony Pollard, where teams might not have been looking at it. He fits the mold of what the Cowboys want. But if you go watch his highlights, even just on Twitter, I mean, he's a really, really good running back.
We're getting some stuff. Everybody be ready. Brandon, please be ready with our special sound.
Yeah.
Does anybody think it's hysterical how like they get so jovial every time there's like a pick? Like, yeah, let's go.
I mean, it's their job. So
I know it's not their job to like be on camera high-fiving and hugging each other every single pick, but I think it's funny. I don't know.
You say that, but if you go and watch the secret audio for the Bears when they drafted Darnell White, you would think that like somebody passed away. Like it was like everybody was quiet. There was no clapping. The room was dark. It was almost like a morning. So I like the way that now. Who are they talking to? That's is that the new running back coach? I don't know. Because I know Skip Pete's no longer there, so I don't know who took over.
Who is that guy?
Mike McCarthy's funny.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that's.
So
what
was the predictions real quick?
I think we all went running back. I just off mine.
McIntosh, okay.
Yeah.
McBride, and then okay. Zach Evans and Tony. I forget what Tony picked. Ooh.
Let's all stay calm.
Oh.
Okay, we have a pick. Let's get ready. Nobody got it right.
Naturally.
With the goodness gracious 169th nice pick in the 2023 NFL draft, the Dallas Cowboys finally have gone offensive line. North Carolina tackle Asim Richards, 6'4", 309 pounds, the 14th ranked tackle on Dane Brugler's board. Had him as a 5th, 6th round grade, the first 5th, 6th round grade, which is kind of the territory we're in here. We talked about them having to draft kind of a half round early. 6'4", like we mentioned, 34-inch arms, 22 years old. Danny Phantom.
Well, I don't know him. Just reading about him now. What I'm really looking for is I'm hoping that this guy's strong, and I'm hoping that he is. So he's a tackle. So this is going to be one of those tackles to guard type of players, which I like that.
So can I bring up one stat I saw on ESPN? They said that he allowed 3 sacks in 1,049 snaps. So pretty good.
Okay.
Do they believe he can move inside or what? I mean,
that's what. Yes, I was about to say that, Tony. ESPN's Todd Archer just tweeted that he's played mostly tackle but can play guard. So they have some position flex, which we know that they love.
And I mean, this is what we were talking about with regards to, did they miss the boat on the offensive lineman earlier in the last round? And, are they reaching for a guy? But if he has the traits in the 5th round that you're looking for with regards to a offensive tackle, offensive guard. If he can compete with Adoga, maybe he steps in right away and just becomes, a really good player. But I mean, it is intriguing. It is intriguing. At least they drafted, like I said, when we were talking about what we wanted, what we envisioned with their next 3 picks. This is like that offensive line depth that I astutely predicted, before changing my mind to Tony and what he said. But I'd like to just hang my head on this one at least.
Well, you did accomplish that at least, Brandon. I kind of going in order here. The Cowboys have now added offensive line depth. We've been screaming for this for 2 days now. So, I mean, the flexibility thing is whatever to me. I mean, they got their guy. I mean, like, I wouldn't say it's their guy. But they have finally, in a technical and literal sense, addressed the offensive line. As Kevin notes, athletic traits. And Michael notes traits, experience, strength, all good. I agree with that. Seems like a high floor sort of thing. Again, contextually, that you're in the 5th round at this point in time. Back-to-back 5th rounds for the Cowboys that we've seen them take tackles with Matt Let's-Go last year. And now, obviously, here with Asim Richards. Tony, you raised your hand. Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, do you mind if I go into a little overview of them a little bit?
I would love that with all of my heart. Make me sing, Perfect. Tony.
So Lance Erline from NFL.com said Richards is a thick-hipped with good lower body power, fueling above average drive blocking potential. He clears space when he's centered into opponents, but he lacks the body control and hand consistency to do so on a regular basis. Pass protection concerns will be diminished with a move inside, but there will still be work needed when it comes to getting his feet in position to slow interior rushers. Richards' drive blocking and potential position versatility give him a shot at a backup role with upside.
I mean, at this point in the draft, I know that everybody, wants to feel like there's this big value, this big home run, whatever, but like all of those are very good things. I mean, we have to remember it's, you're getting further. The better players have been taken in a theoretical sense. And so I'm fine with this. I mean, and again, like we do this, all the time, where we literally are saying like, I know these weren't in order, but we said we want to see them add offensive line depth. They literally do that. And we're like, what a bunch of hooligans, how could they do the thing that we asked them to do? So Danny, in that sense, like good for them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and we talked about this earlier too, is if the Cowboys did take an offensive lineman, later in the draft, we'd feel good about it because, they know what they're looking for, and they're really good at finding these guys. And I was just looking at some of the video from him too. I mean, I like this guy's build. I mean, he looks like a tackle. I mean, he's got the length, and the frame for it. And it actually he gets out of his stance pretty well. I'm interested to see how the Cowboys, what they think of him and their evaluation, because this, if they're going to try to move him inside, I think that he does. So he's got some good core strength. It's a guy that I think it's going to be interesting to see how he performs in camp. Is this somebody that's going to take a little bit to develop into like they've done before with Farniok and some of their other guys, or is he a player that can come in and play more immediate? So I don't know. It's interesting. We'll have to keep studying this guy and try to learn more about him, but I don't not like it.
Brandon.
Yeah, I think if he can compete with Josh Ball to be this sort of tackle guard flex, and with a higher upside, just better overall player. And that's the thing. I mean, there's a new offensive line coach. Mike Solari is now the guy where maybe this is somebody that he wanted. And like, again, when a new regime, a new coaching staff comes in, they want to get the guys that they're comfortable working with. And if he's a guy that presents like what Tony was reading off with his skills, with Lance Erline saying that he, has room to grow, needs to fix things, but he has the prototypical body that you're looking for. And if his pass protection as a tackle struggles, but inside, he'd probably be better with that. I mean, there's nobody better to be working with than if it's a Tyler Biotish, who's a pro now. He's been in the league for going into his 4th year. And then you also have Tyler Smith or Tyron Smith at the left tackle position. So I think that you have good guys on the outside to help him if they want to put him at left guard, or if he just wants to, be the right guard developmental guy. We don't know how long Zach Martin's going to be around. It could be 3 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 2 years. And so it's better to bring these guys in now, develop them, see what you have, especially with the new offensive line coach. And if he hits, fantastic. If not, it's a 5th-round pick. I mean, look at the Cowboys' track record with 5th-round picks in the previous few seasons. Not that great. And you're not really looking at it and saying, oh, man, they really should have hit a home run with this guy. It's like, no, you take a chance, you see what happens, and go from there.
Well, to kind of touch on what you said about 5th-round picks, comparisonly, last year's 5th-round pick was Matt Waletzko, a tackle who, by prospect grade, if you value that thing from NFL.com, Asim Richards has a better score than Matt Waletzko, and now Matt Waletzko is the type of guy that we're looking at as the possible swing tackle, somebody who'd be the next man up off the bench with the Tyler Smith situation. So I personally see, I mean, just based on the little things I've seen a little bit of Richards in the pre-draft kind of situation here, but I see a move inside. I see a guy who has a little bit of issues with the lateral movement. I think anybody who has speed or lateral quickness issues, they're better off being put inside in a phone booth. I think he can use his length. He got 34-inch arms. He can kind of be strong in the middle there. And it's like Danny said, like we all allude to, once you get to this point, it's about traits and trying to build and create something there. So if they kick him inside with the tackle flex, I think there's worse things they could have did with this 5th-round pick.
Danny.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I also feel like we were talking about this earlier about what are you really getting here? Are you going to find somebody that can come in? And we thought maybe a running back, because that was on my goal list, is somebody who can come in and play a lot of snaps. But outside of that, there's really just not a lot of positions and players and talent available to where you can get that. So what you want is a guy that you can develop that has that upside. And as I'm reading and learning more about him, it's you got to feel good because the Cowboys now they've used late round resources on Richards now, Waletzko, Ball, and Farniok over the last few years. And they have a good list of, if one of these players hits and they're able to develop, then suddenly you have your offensive line, and they just keep reinvesting and keep hoping because every once in a while you're going to get a Terrence Steele, and you're going to land it. And so I'm curious to see how this is going to play out. I really don't know. I think there's a wide range of outcomes when it comes to what this player offers, and we're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have touched on kind of everything. I have zero issues drafting for trades. I have zero issues, with whatever. Tony, I know you're peacing out. We'll see you later. Tony, bid adieu to the crowd. Tony will be around, obviously, always. But Tony, have a good rest of your weekend. Enjoy the Blackstone. So there goes Tony Catalina. Soon enough, we'll be getting ready for the 6th round. Yeah, I mean, you want to draft some trades. You want to, ultimately try to you're buying materials here, right? Like that's you got to build the house in these rounds. You can't go and buy a built home. You have to buy the materials. You have to pick the countertop, whatever. That's what you have to accomplish at this point. And so you've got some guard tackle flexibility. Mike Solari confirmed that. So I think they got relatively normal value. Again, Dane had him as a 5th, 6th round grade. That's where you're at here at the edge of the 5th round. I have zero issues with this. And again, I think it's important to remember what we said. We wanted them to add offensive line depth. They did that. And now we're going to sit here and be like, well, it wasn't the exact offensive line depth I wanted. No, like that's how this works. Like they had to get some depth. This was the player they evaluated. They trust that. Eric Gray has gone to the New York Giants, by the way. So that's one name off the board. But I'm good with it. I'm happy at this point. I think they're checking off some boxes finally, Danny.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, is we don't know how the Cowboys stack their players. I mean, we're talking about what are they doing? They're just completely passing this up. But you could have a situation to where they have a few guys that they're high on that they think that's going to be available. So they're able to address, go after these other players that may necessarily not be a bigger need when you talk like a player like Fihoko. But the Cowboys, if they see those traits and they feel good about what they could develop, as a player, I mean, it's I mean, again, I don't know anything about them, so I can't say I like this pick. But the Cowboys, they're really good at evaluating and developing offensive linemen. So I'm more intrigued, more than anything.
Danny, give me a second. I know you have an athletic score for Richards.
And I was going to say, RJ, if you could pull up the tweet that I just shared, it's from Zach Wolchuk from 105.3 The Fan. I guess they have Mike Solari on, and he confirmed that the focus right now is to put Tyler Smith at tackle. So it seems like that the discussion of where Tyler Smith is going to be lining up in the offseason is going to be put to rest for right now. So that opens up a few possibilities because you don't know what's going to be the case with Tyron. Does that mean that Terrence Steele is a little bit more behind in his rehab and they want to put Tyron Smith at right tackle? Do they want to put Terrence Steele at left guard and put Tyron Smith at right tackle just on opening day roster? And then does that mean that they envision somebody else like a Josh Ball or a Chuma Edoga being left guard and then making Terrence Steele or Tyron Smith compete for the right tackle spot?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, like none of us have an issue, right? They want to get Tyler Smith at left tackle full time. Like, fine, that makes total sense at this point, given where Tyler's at in his career, what he showed the Cowboys last year, obviously, and that explains the weirdness, right? Because it's so, they have these, like, I wouldn't say conflicting ideologies, but they want to get Tyler Smith at left tackle, but Tyron Smith is on the team, so let's play Tyron at right tackle, but Terrence Steele is on this team, so that explains the hesitancy or the wishy-washiness or whatever you want to call it to, well, let's try Terrence Steele left guard. That's where we have the hole. Let's try that out. Let's try Josh Ball left guard. Let's try all these options at left guard. So it does seem like the Cowboys are sort of trying to collect an abundance of options and seeing whichever one sticks, and playing that out as the preferred path. But I think we can start to now buy, especially since they haven't drafted a guard, a pure guard. Nothing against Asim Richards. Obviously, he knows, or he has some guard flexibility, but they are clearly, they have a direction, and this is the first announcement that they really want to go forward with Tyler Smith at left tackle.
Yeah, and the only thing that I really got out of all that is that they have options, and we really don't know where their mind's at as far as who they think is going to be the left guard, but we just know that there are a lot of choices, and I don't know. I'm like I said, I'm just real curious to see how this is going to shape out because there's so many different routes they can go with this. But I want to say that as much as I like Tyron Smith and would certainly like to use him when we have him, I think that we all know that Tyler is our left guard, and I don't like any notion of putting him elsewhere because this is where he's at. He logged the most snaps of any Cowboys player last season, protecting Dak's blind spot. So this guy, that's his spot. Okay, he's impressed us and quieted all the naysayers.
You're referring to Tyler as a left tackle, right? Because you said guard.
Tyler as a left tackle. Yeah, Tyler as a left tackle.
Okay,
yes. Sorry. Yeah. So I mean, I feel like that I'm glad they're committing to that, and then everything else we can try to work itself out.
Okay, so here's what's about to happen. The sixth round is about to come to a close. The fifth round, excuse me, and we're going to start the sixth round. For everyone who's watching, we're going to have a new stream. So if you're watching on YouTube, on Twitch, or Facebook, we're going to have a new one. We're going to take about 10 minutes, going to run, shove some food in our mouths, get ready, get set, and then we'll launch a brand new stream. As you can see, there is the link in the chat. So head on over there. We'll be there in about 10 minutes time. We're going to have that stream for the 6th and 7th round. Brandon and Danny are going to be here. I think we should all give a round of applause to Danny because he was not scheduled to be here for the 6th and 7th rounds, but he has committed to it as the show has gone on. So Danny, well done. We will be joined by Chris Hulling. So again, everybody in the audience, take a break yourself. Go throw some water on your face. We got 2 more picks left to play with, and we'll see you on the other side for round 6 and 7 of the 2023 NFL Draft.